Yo, what's good, Shinobi Nation? Welcome back to Just a Shinobi, the home of the craziest Naruto what-ifs. Today we're jumping into part 9 of What If Yajuu Sanin Train Neglected Naruto. So strap in, because things are about to get explosive. If you're new to the channel, make sure to smash that subscribe button, hit the bell so you don't miss the next chapter, and share this video with your whole ninja squad. And of course, drop your theories in the comments. Your support is what keeps this shinobi grinding. Chapter 36, The Preliminaries, Part 1. Now, if there is anyone present who would wish to resign from the preliminaries, this would be the time to do so. Naruto twisted his head around and gazed at the collection of teams that had also managed to make it to the tower. Ep09 hadn't been kidding. The Forest of Death had certainly lived up to its reputation. Overall, only 9 teams had been able to push through the forest and acquire both scrolls. The presence of Team Guy didn't surprise him in the least. Based on what Sasuke and Hinata had told him about Lee and Neji, it had probably been a breeze for them to reach the tower after they had stolen their scroll. His stare lingered on Neji long enough for the two to share a short glaring contest, and he was sure to give the Sound team the same treatment. He noted one of the 2 teams from Waterfall had managed to make it, if only by the skin of their teeth if their torn attire was any indicator. The Kumo team he had offered to help was also present, but their 3rd teammate was suspiciously missing. He noted that Kabuto's team was also missing a member. His gaze lingered over the team from Suna, but he quickly looked away as he felt the red-haired boy from the forest notice his stare. What truly surprised him was that all 3 of the rookie teams had somehow managed to make it. He didn't know if their training was anywhere near the level that his team had gone through, but he was anxious to see the results nonetheless. Last chance? The Hokage mused as he stared into each of the faces of the genin, looking for any crack in resolve. After another minute of silence, he smiled and nodded towards Hate. Alright then, let's get this show on the road. Hate droned, direct your attention to the video board as we randomly generate the matchups. Naruto felt a familiar excitement rise up in his chest at the thought of fighting in front of so many people for the purpose of creeping closer to his ultimate goal. So he felt disappointed when neither of the 2 names on the screen was his. Sasuke Uchiha vs. Yoro Akado. Sasuke felt his chest swirling with excitement, and Hate began directing everyone else up the stairs towards the balcony. Alright team. Don't you dare lose on me, I'm expecting to see you in the finals, Naruto said as he shot him a grin. The same goes for you to be. Nobody gets to beat you but me, he replied with a smirk of his own. Now boys. Save it for later. Best of luck, Sasuke-kun. We'll be cheering for you. Hinata cheered and the 2 of them began making their way towards the stairs. Kakashi chose to linger and waited until the 2 were out of earshot before whispering, "Have you had any problems?" "None so far," he replied as he rubbed his shoulder. "Hinata and Naruto sparred with me a little earlier, and nothing seemed out of the ordinary. I guess we'll just have to wait and see how well the Dove Seal holds up." Kakashi nodded and gave him one last thumbs up, before lazily making his own way towards the balcony. Sasuke gave the retreating form of his team one last look before turning to face his bespectacled opponent. Besides the bruises he had received from his encounter with he honestly felt great. The spot on his shoulder where the seal was felt incredibly sore, but other than that he was raring to go. Whatever the Dove had done, it was working wonders. The feelings of nausea and grime he had felt during his first day after being marked were almost completely gone. He cracked his neck and dropped into his stance as he stared down his opponent. Hate nodded at both the genin and raised his hand to signal them to start. Sasuke smirked as his eyes flashed red, and he shot off towards his opponent. "Well, that was a little disappointing," Naruto murmured as he leaned against the rail. He stared down at the unconscious form of Sasuke's opponent, and sighed as Sasuke was declared the winner. The match had taken less than 4 minutes, 2 of which were spent by the other guy shouting off some exposition about his jutsu. Without the cursed seal holding him back, Sasuke had torn the guy apart in taijutsu, and Yoroi's peculiar ability to drain chakra barely even fazed him. He had plenty of experience with that by sparring with Hinata. The guy was certainly above average, but then again, so was everyone else in the room. "You couldn't have made it more interesting?" he whined as Sasuke joined them on the balcony. "Not my fault if I'm paired with a weak opponent. I just hope I have better luck in the next round. I actually want this to be interesting." Careful what you wish for, Kakashi mused as they watched Shikamaru and the girl from Sound make their way towards the floor. Here's an easy lesson you kids should take to heart: never tempt fate. She tends to be stingy. As the match got underway, Naruto leaned in towards Sasuke and whispered, "How did the seal do?" It didn't look like there were any problems. None whatsoever. Turns out you can do something when you put your mind to it. Naruto smirked, and they both turned their attention back to the fight below them. The next few matches seemed to fly by. Team 7 had collectively flinched at the sight of Zaku blowing his arms apart, and all three were shocked by Temari's brutal defeat of the girl from Team Guy. That was a bit harsh, Naruto said as he watched the paramedics whisk Tenten off of the floor. He unconsciously rubbed his lower back as he imagined how rough that final landing must have been. Indeed, Guy mused behind him, but this should serve as an important lesson for her. She may not become what she is today, but what she will have learned will be just as important. Better for her to discover this weakness now, rather than out in the field of battle. Guy-sensei, I will be sure to fight twice as hard. When the matches are over, we will be proud to tell her that Niji and I have moved on to the finals. She will be with us in a fighting spirit. Lee boomed as he gave Guy a salute. Well said, Lee. Guy boomed with a smile. Now all of you should pay close attention. This next match is going to be quite interesting. Surprised by his change in tone, Team 7 and Lee turned their attention back to the floor as the genin from Waterfall and Kumo stood across from each other. Alright, now are you two ready? Hade coughed out, glancing between the two. All set, the boy from Waterfall exclaimed as he stretched his right arm across his chest. The white-haired boy from Kumo simply nodded from behind his gray scarf. Alright then. Begin. Hade drew out as he brought his hand down. There was a flash of light and a loud crack filled the room. Dust filled the air and the observers could only look on, dumbfounded, at the new sight before them. The Kumonin was now where his opponent had stood, with his fist outstretched. Across the room was the unconscious form of the Waterfall genin, embedded deep within the concrete wall. Sasuke could only stutter as he tried to comprehend what they had just seen. What the hell was that? Well, isn't that interesting? Kakashi murmured, drawing his attention. Sasuke turned and was thankful to see that Hinata looked just as lost as he was. What did surprise him was the similar look on Lee, Naruto, and Niji's faces. Did you catch that too? Naruto murmured to Lee. Just barely, Lee somberly replied. That's insane, Naruto muttered as he watched the medical staff attempt to pry the Waterfall genin from the wall. Care to explain what the hell just happened to be? Well, hit him, he replied bluntly. Gee, thanks. Could you be a little more specific? That guy was just ridiculously fast, was his only response. But there was something else too, Niji finally chimed in. Agreed. Did you see what he did with his chakra? Naruto asked, temporarily forgetting his strife with the older genin. He was spreading it all over his body. It was barely there for a second, but his chakra system flashed from blue to white. Fed up with their cryptic discussion, Sasuke leaned towards Hinata. Would you care to explain? I'm sorry, Sasuke-kun, but I didn't activate it. I didn't witness what Niji-Nizen saw. Sasuke cursed himself for his stupidity, as a realization swept over him. He should have been using his Sharingan. Not only could he have seen what was going on, but he also could have potentially copied whatever technique the boy had just used. He glared across the room to the other balcony as the Kumonin leaned back against the wall. The spiky-haired genin closed his eyes as his more talkative teammate yammered on and on beside him. That EHL guy is something else, Naruto murmured, gaining several grunts of agreement. They were shaken from their stupor by the ringing of the monitor board, as the names once again began to spin. Come on! Please, 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 please! Naruto whined as the yellow lights flashed through the names of the remaining combatants. Patience, Naruto. You'll have your turn, Kakashi chuckled, placing a hand on head. I know, Sensei, but I'm just so excited. Oh! Who is it going to be? Hinata was wondering the same thing. She held her hands to her chest as she painstakingly watched the numbers act out their roulette. After several agonizing seconds, Her eyes widened as her name finally flashed across the board. Hinata Hyuga vs. Kabuto Yakushi. Alright, Hinata. You're up next, Naruto exclaimed as he slapped her on the back. Why yes, she murmured as she let out a sigh of relief. It felt like a massive weight had been lifted off her shoulders. With the looming presence of her cousin and that red-haired boy from Suna in the room, she had been terrified of who she could have potentially been paired up with. Hinata? Kakashi said, drawing her attention. He placed a hand on her shoulder and offered her one of his patented eye smiles. I have full confidence in you. Go out there and do your best. She smiled up at him as Naruto swung his arm around her shoulder. She's going to kick butt. Now go on down there and try to go easy on him. You got this in the bag. Right, Theme? Sasuke smirked, but gave her an approving nod. She giggled at their antics. They were just too supportive. With a final good luck, she began making her way downstairs. Across the room, Kabuto watched their interaction with mild interest. His eyes swept along the balcony until he locked eyes with a Konoha Jounin leaning against the wall at the end of the room. The man's toothy smirk and nod drew him back to his conversation before entering the tower. Did you accomplish your objectives, Orochimaru-sama? He asked as his master emerged from the shadows. To varying degrees of success. I was quite pleased with Sasuke-kun's performance, and I granted him the mark. However, the Hyuga was able to escape without my gift. Really? I'm surprised the Genin was able to escape from you. It appears that the entire team is full of surprises, he chuckled as the memory of that yellow flash of light echoed in his mind. We might have to keep an eye on this as well. Make sure that the Uzumaki boy is also being monitored. Consider it done. Are there any other changes to the plan? Yes, actually, Orochimaru replied as he turned to face him. I no longer want you to excuse yourself from the preliminaries. Of course, but why, if I may ask? Despite our interaction in the forest, I didn't get as good a look into Hinata-chan's progress as I would like. Her potential intrigues me to no end, especially if she has truly unlocked the Hyuga's little secret. I will make the necessary adjustments so that you will face her in the preliminaries. As you wish, my lord. Good. Oh, this is getting fun, he cackled as he turned to face towards the tower. Just imagine it, Kabuto. Being able to decipher both the Uchiha stone tablet and Hyuga's stone ring. The ultimate secrets of the clans are directly linked to the sage himself. I'm sure it will prove fruitful, Kabuto chuckled. Before I forget, I also met with our contact within the Hyuga before the exams. They had a rather peculiar request. Really now? They were interested if you would allow them to study Sasuke's body after you are forced to switch out of it. She isn't bothered if you keep your eyes, but she offered a new shipment of fresh food in exchange. Let her know I shall consider it. Also tell her that she is free to access our base along the southern border if he wishes. I know she is getting close with her pet project, and the tools there should help speed things along. If Hinata-chan proves herself in your match, her research could prove valuable. As you wish, Orochimaru-sama. Orochimaru smirked before pausing and gazing off to the east. A sinister grin started plastering itself across his face as a familiar presence entered the range of his senses. It seems they found the bodies. Start heading towards the tower. I will meet you after the matches are complete. I believe it has been too long since my old student and I last had a chat. I wish you the best of luck, Kabuto-san. Hinata bowed before slipping into her stance. A smile plastered across his face as she returned a small bow of his own. To you as well, Hinata-sama. May our match truly push us to our limits. Or at least to yours. Hade gave the signal and Hinata dashed off towards her opponent, striking the first blow against the older genin. Kabuto definitely beat her in size and in physical strength, but his lankiness made him more open for her short, precise strikes, which Hinata took advantage of in full force. As they exchanged blows, her fingers danced across his skin, leaving a trail of red welts in their wake. A tap here, 2 jabs there, and she finally started to notice his movements growing slower. Good. His right arm should be completely locked up by now. She jumped back to prepare her next kata. She paused and steadied her hands before diving back towards him. She spun a fake out to his left, before launching a kick towards his right side. She was caught off guard as his hands shot up and caught her kick with ease. He smirked as he tightened his grip and tossed her across the room. She spun in midair and crashed onto her knees. She slid to a halt and stared up at the boy, who casually smiled at her, with a hand on his hip. What's going on? The muscles in his arm should have been completely locked up. I'm sorry, Hinata-sama, but you're going to have to do better than that, the boy smiled, adjusting his glasses. She narrowed her eyes as she brought her hands into a hand seal. Byakugan! She cried as the world turned grayscale and the chakra systems of everyone in the room lit up bright blue. She was surprised by the state of his arm, or rather, the lack thereof. It was completely unscathed, as if nothing had even happened. Well, if you won't come to me, I guess I'll have to come to you, he said before launching at her. She blocked his initial kick, and parried away his oncoming jabs and punches as she searched for an opening. She knocked up an incoming blow and lashed out with a quick strike to his chest, only for her palm to be caught in his larger hands. As her chakra flooded his, he smiled and raised his other arm and shot his flattened palm towards her chest. Her eyes widened at his sudden increase in speed, but she just managed to catch the strike with her free hand. Immediately, she gasped in pain as she felt the tendons in her hand being torn apart. Tears stung her eyes as she planted her foot on his chest and kicked off of him. Kabuto made no attempt to follow her, as she landed a safe distance away. He raised his eyebrows as a green glow he was all too familiar with enveloped her free hand. Oh ho! So you are versed in medical ninjutsu as well. I'm quite impressed by Hinata-sama. Our art is a practice that is sadly underutilized in the shinobi world. Your interest in the subject says a lot about your personality and intelligence. You should be commended. Through his speech, she fought back tears as she mended the torn tissue. With her, she could make out the distinct shape of the chakra scalpel's jutsu surrounding his hand. What really surprised her was the activity going on in his right palm. She could literally see it shrinking back to its normal size as the foreign chakra was expelled from the system. How are you doing that? Your body is somehow recovering from the effects of this. Call it a specialty of mine. Due to my vast experience in medical ninjutsu, I have developed a technique that keeps my body in a constant state of alert. Once it detects any damage, it begins healing the injury immediately without needing a thought. Hinata inwardly cursed as she rose back to her feet. She flexed her throbbing hand and started wrapping it in bandages from her bag. As she rolled the bindings around her palm, she quietly studied her opponent. No questions about it. The first thing she had to do was find a way to overcome his healing factor. If she couldn't, any damage she could possibly inflict would be mute. She was tempted to simply use her lion fawn technique to drain away at his chakra, for his technique certainly had to use up a lot, but he revealed that he had the reserves to keep it going for a long time. In fact, it surprised her just how big his reserves actually were. While she was used to seeing monumental amounts of chakra due to being around Naruto, Kabuto's were ridiculously large for a genin. They were almost the size of Kakashi-sensei's. She grit her teeth as she eyed the razor-sharp blade of chakra protruding from his hands. She was also not too keen on getting too close to him again after the revelation of his use of chakra scalpels. It would only take a simple tap or brush against his hands, and her tendons and muscles could be shredded to pieces. While he had yet to truly prove it, for some reason she suspected that he was holding back. Whether it was out of sympathy or contempt, she didn't know, but she could tell that he could probably outspeed her if he really tried. Time to test that healing ability, she thought as she began dash towards him, flying through hand signs. When she was within 5 feet, she cried out, "Sway-ton, pressure stream." Due to the distance between them, it was all Kabuto could do to dive out of the way to evade the raging stream of water. The pencil-thin stream followed his trajectory, and he winced as it slashed above his ribs. She was in on him in a heartbeat, pulling out a kunai, and slashing at his arm. He twisted, managing to reduce the slash into a light cut. In annoyance, he lashed out with a speed greater than she could follow, and sliced his invisible blade through her left arm. Hinata cried out in pain as she landed and jumped back, cradling her arm to her chest. Kabuto tried to hide his growing irritation as his body got to work repairing the damage. It was truly difficult for him to hold himself back to such extents. He had to be careful. Under the watchful eye of the Hokage and some of the greatest Jounin Konoha had ever produced, The tiniest slip up in performance would arouse some suspicions. Hinata landed on her knees and fought through the pain as she studied the injuries on his arm and chest and began to heal themselves. She noted how the deeper cut on his chest was taking longer than the shallow cut on his arm. It made sense. The greater the injury, the more chakra and time it took to heal it. I need to inflict a major injury. Nothing life-threatening, but enough to push his ability to its limit. If I can manage it, it should slow him down and drain his chakra. She grit her teeth as her chakra got to work repairing the damage. But it's not like he's just going to let me do that. He's faster than me, and it's even more difficult with his chakra scalpels thrown into the mix. I need something that can give me some kind of edge. They may slow him down for a couple of seconds before he recovers, but I need something that will last through the match. What should she do? Naruto asked. I'm not sure. That pesky healing ability of his seems to be quite challenging for her to overcome, especially since her technique involves shutting down the body, Kakashi replied. He folded his arms as he glanced down at his male students. This is the danger of battling a medical ninja. Many people dismiss them out of hand due to the connotation of their name, and they end up regretting it. Hot-headed shinobi prefer the flashiness of explosive jutsu, but being able to inflict lacerations to your opponent's muscles and nervous system with just a simple touch is just as, if not, more effective. Including their nasty tendency to heal any injury, whether it is theirs or their comrades, you have a devastating enemy who can swing the tide of any mission. As her jutsu finished its work, Hinata raised her head and caught eyes with the older genin. He was still standing in place, offering her that same, off-putting smile as he adjusted his glasses, which caused her to pause. That's it. Her eyes darted across his body as her plan started to fall into place. He may be able to quickly overcome the Jukin's effect, but it will shut him down for at least a few seconds. Hopefully that will be enough. Kakashi leaned in as he watched his student rise to her feet, a new, steely resolve flaring in her eyes. She's got something. Come on, Hinata. Let's see what you've cooked up. She brought her hands together and cried out, Bunshin no Jutsu. 5 puffs of smoke erupted next to her and Kabuto was greeted to a line of Hinata scowling at him as they each drew out their kunai. The original reached into her bag and threw down a smoke bomb, enveloping herself and her clones in the purple cloud. Simple illusions are all fun and games, but that level of jutsu is not going to be enough, Hinata-sama. I'm starting to think Orochimaru believes in your ability a bit too much, Kabuto smirked as the wall of clones raced towards him. She's obviously not in the front. The first is always the distraction, which means the true one is either the third or fourth, he thought as he slowly reached for his own kunai. He ignored the first, and glanced behind its shoulder towards the approaching group. He prepared to let the intangible image pass through his body, but winced in astonishment as the muscles along his arm and shoulder began to cramp and tense up. His eyes shot wide open as he stared down into the fierce eyes right in front of him. She tricked me. She actually tricked me, he thought in genuine surprise. He was too slow to recover as she quickly jabbed at his other arm, momentarily disabling it. As his healing factor kicked into effect, she used what little time she had to swipe up with her kunai. Now, while he can't mold his chakra scalpels. Coming back to his senses, Kabuto leaned back to evade her attack. As he jerked back, his glasses lifted shortly off of his face. Her eyes narrowed and she twisted her kunai, changing its trajectory. With one swift motion, she cleanly sliced his glasses in half. Kabuto growled as he felt his body fully expel the chakra in him. He slashed out at her only to be met with air, as she ducked and darted away. Very clever, Hinata. She knows he's faster and physically stronger than she is, so she decided to impede his sight to give her an advantage. Nicely done, Kakashi thought as he smiled down at his student. I did it. I need to keep up the pressure. She reached into her kunai pouch and threw down 3 more smoke pellets. Kabuto only smirked as the purple smoke began to surround him. I'm sorry, Hinata-sama, but if you think this little show will give you an advantage, then you are surely mistaken. He stood completely still as Hinata disappeared into smoke. He lightly snorted and closed his eyes, losing himself in his other senses. A good shinobi does not just rely on their eyes. Even if yours are far superior than most, it is a weakness to rely so heavily on one thing. A shinobi must be able to utilize all of their senses, such as smell or. He whipped around, grabbing Hinata by her throat, and slammed her into the ground, knocking the wind from her lungs. Sound. He placed a knee on her chest and held his hand above her face, his chakra scalpels flaring to life. Submit. I would rather not have to make this messy. Hinata squirmed under his weight and thrust something up in his face. It took a second for him to recognize the shape, and when he did, it was too late. His eyes widened as the tags began to glow, making his blood run cold. Exploding tags. He leapt away at his full speed, putting as much distance as he could between the blast radius and himself. As he shot off the smoke, and after several seconds, he was surprised and stunned by the lack of an explosion. As it finally sunk in, he began to chuckle as he realized that he had been fooled. That was a very clever use of Genjutsu, Hinata-sama. Very well done, he called out. The smoke began to clear away, revealing Hinata on one knee, fighting to regain her breath. She was getting nowhere, and she knew it. Even after removing his glasses, it barely slowed him down. She needed to find a way to overload his senses, so she could have a chance to get in and disable his body. Naruto and Sasuke grit their teeth as their hands gripped the handrails. That was too close, Sasuke muttered. She's lucky he fell for her bluff. Come on, Hinata! You can do it! Naruto shouted. Kabuto was starting to get bored of this, and decided she needed to start stepping up her game. If Orochimaru-sama was going to invest time into her, she needed to start proving she was far more capable than this. He shot off towards her, forcing her to start weaving through multiple hand signs. She took a deep breath and formed a massive swell of chakra in her gut as she shot off a large water bullet at the ground in front of Kabuto. He leapt through the splash of water, and was on her in seconds. He reared back and kicked at her prone form only to stumble through thin air as the henge faded away. He slid to a stop and turned around just as a kunai flew past his face. His instinct as a shinobi flared in his mind, and he caught a kunai heading straight towards his face with the handle. A sizzling noise caught his attention, and he realized his mistake too late as the tag tied to the kunai lit up. The flash bang went off right in his face, causing him to scream as his visual and auditory senses were completely overloaded. Hinata rushed at him with as much energy as she could with her kunai in hand. She slashed numerous times across his chest, dodging out of the way of his flailing arms. He spun around to deliver a kick, which she easily ducked under. She crossed her arms and slashed the kunai across his chest one last time. She let the kunai clatter to the floor as she began pumping chakra into her hands until they were glowing bright blue. 8 trigrams, 64 palm guard. She cried out as the net of sharp chakra slammed into his chest. He cried out as the tiny blades of chakra shred across his skin. As fast as his healing factor was, it was being pushed to its absolute limit as the needle-like threads bombarded his body. She finally halted her rotation and delivered one final hit to his chest, sending him flying across the room into the wall. He slammed into the concrete and fell to the ground as blood seeped from his chest. He growled as he struggled to his feet, but froze as a kunai landed next to his face with a tag attacked by a string. This time that exploding tag is real, Kabuto-san. Please submit. I would rather not make this messy, she cheekily replied, echoing his earlier comment. Kabuto spat out some blood and glanced up at the balcony at his master. He could see the excitement dancing in his eyes, and took his growing smile for his satisfaction. She is lucky Kabuto held himself back to such an extent. I'm sure he won't be as forgiving the next time they cross paths, Orochimaru thought as Kabuto raised his hand to surrender. Kabuto Yakushi has forfeited the match. The winner is Hinata Hyuga, Hade called out, which received a rambunctious applause from Naruto. Way to go, Hinata! You did it! He cried as he jumped down and enveloped her in a big hug. Despite the cloud of steam erupting from her ears from embarrassment, a warm feeling of content washed over her body. She had done it. She had made it through the preliminaries. Chapter 37, The Preliminaries, Part 2. Stay down and quit making an embarrassment of yourself, or I'll put you down like the mud you are. Kiba growled as he fought to get back to his feet. Niji impassively shrugged off Kiba's fierce glare as he towered over Akamaru's prone form. The small puppy whimpered as the Hyuga applied as much pressure as he could without crushing the poor dog. Kiba struggled to stand up straight and clutched his limp arm to his side. He was not going out like this. Not to some stuck-up bastard like him. He coughed into his sleeve as he shakily reached into his pack for another soldier pill. I wouldn't advise that if I were you. Ingesting too many can have detrimental effects. There is no reason to put yourself at such risk, especially when you know how outclassed you are. All you'll be doing is risking your health for your pride. Shut up, you bastard. I'm going to tear you apart for what you've done to Akamaru. I could have done much worse, he coolly replied as he watched Kiba gulp down another pill. If he had stayed down the first time, he wouldn't be in the position he's in now. Trust me, I take no pleasure from injuring a helpless animal, but if you continue, I'll be happy to add another limp body to the floor. We'll just see about that, Kiba shouted as he raced towards Niji. Gutsuga! He cried out, spinning as hard as he could with his good arm. Niji calmly stepped back from Akamaru and twisted out of harm's way at the last second. Just as Kiba passed by, Niji whipped out his hand and gripped Kiba's oversized hoodie at the back of his neck. Grinding to a rapid halt, Niji continued his motion and slammed Kiba into the floor. Not giving him a second to recover, Niji was swiftly upon him. His fingers painfully darted across his arms and legs, closing whatever that was left open. Niji brushed off the dust that had accumulated from Kiba's impact and looked over towards Hate. I believe we're done here. Hate grimly nodded and raised his arm. Winner, Niji Hyuga. Team 7 was quiet as they watched Kiba and Akamaru carted off towards the infirmary. So that's why Hinata has always seemed so afraid of Niji. That guy is ridiculous, Sasuke thought as he watched Niji head back towards the stairs. Hinata wasn't visibly shaking, but Kakashi could tell from her eyes that she was terrified of even the possibility of being in Kiba's position against her cousin. Yet, he noticed something else. She felt pity and remorse. As he watched her eyes follow her cousin up the stairs, the old memory of the Hyuga incident clicked in his mind. So, you're still carrying that weight on your shoulders? He internally sighed as he stepped next to his student. Excellent work, Niji, if a little harsh at times, Guy commented as Niji retook his place by his side. The fool wouldn't stay down. If he wanted to walk away with fewer injuries, he had plenty of opportunities to do so. That is true, and I'm not criticizing your actions during the match. However, you could have ended that much sooner than you did. Niji scoffed and finally caught sight of Naruto, who had been staring at him since he arrived. Got something to say, Uzumaki? Naruto shook his head. I won't defend Kiba for being stubborn, but I don't like it when people beat up on my friends. Then find stronger friends, Niji replied as he crossed his arms. If that slacker was truly destined to move past this point, then he would have. Today, fate favored my victory. That's stupid. I don't believe in fate. We make our own paths. No one else. Then he should have worked harder to push his path past mine. Only those with a will strong enough are able to get ahead in this life. He finished his sentence, and seemed to fix his glare on Hinata. Naruto was about to retort again, but he felt a tugging on his sleeve and looked back to see Hinata trying to pull him away from the argument. He relented at the sight, but sent Niji one last glare before turn walked over to Sasuke's right, away from Niji. That guy just drives me crazy. I hope we meet in the next round. I can't wait to wipe that smug look off his face, Naruto angrily muttered as he leaned against the rail. Maybe you'll get the chance, but cool off first. You could be coming up soon, and you'll need a level head, Kakashi commented as he placed a hand on Naruto's shoulder. Naruto huffed and took a deep breath, before nodding to Kakashi that he was good. Kakashi nodded and walked over to his right, and fell in line next to Hinata. Thank you for doing that. The last thing we need is Naruto disqualifying himself before his match, he whispered. It was no problem, sensei. I would just prefer it if none of us had to fight, she whispered as she began twiddling her thumbs. There's the tick again, Kakashi internally sighed as he watched his student subvert into her old habit. It had been weeks since he had last seen her do it, and he had hoped they had expelled it from her system. After taking in his students, Kakashi had made it his personal mission to help them overcome their greatest internal challenges. For the boys, it was easier. Naruto needed the support and acceptance from a group of people that genuinely cared for him, and his team and Iruka were happy to fill that void. Sasuke was slightly harder, but the boy had already come to him of his own accord, asking how to better control his emotions. All three of them had faced years of psychological damage, but Hinata was the trickiest. When he had first met her, her entire personality simply screamed submission. From the way she would avert her eyes to her desperate attempts to please others. She had made astounding progress, and all three of them rubbed off on each other in fantastic ways. Whenever she was alone with her team, her confidence was at an all-time high, so it was disheartening to see how fast it could revert into her old behavior. If she was ever going to fully come out of her shell, there were three things she was going to have to face: her father, her cousin, and Naruto. Oh, he was not looking forward to that. Kakashi could feel the migraine that would form when that day decided to rear its ugly head. He had gone through the ups and downs of romantic angst enough during his time with his own team. If he reciprocated her feelings, great. If he rejected them, great. Kakashi sighed as he watched Naruto fuss once again about Hinata's injuries from her match. He would get so close to her face, he was worried the poor girl was going to pass out. Sasuke would silently watch the two interact, before yanking the blonde by his collar and chastising him for bothering the girl. Then there was the question of how he would react. "Excuse me, Lady Hyuga." The voice shook him from his thoughts, and the team turned to face the blonde-haired boy from the Kumo team. "I thought I would come over and congratulate you. Your performance was quite spectacular, and might I say, you are even more lovely up close." Hinata turned red at the compliment but smiled and bowed her head. "Oh, thank you. And you are?" J. Oshiro, and I am always at your service," he smirked as he whipped out a yellow rose almost from nowhere. Hinata turned an even brighter shade of red, but took the flower with a stammering thank you. Sasuke frowned at the interaction, and Naruto was fed up with it. All right, wise guy. Is that all?" he said as he stepped between them. "And I thought you Konoha ninja were supposed to be the ones preaching about cooperation between villages. What's wrong with trying to get to know someone better?" Naruto glanced over his shoulder and stared across the hall at the identical rose, sitting on the ground next to the Suna girl's feet. "Right," he drawled out as he raised an eyebrow. The cocky expression of the brunette's face changed to a more apologetic look. "By the way, I also came over here to thank you for offering your assistance to our team during the second exam. I wanted to apologize for my teammates' rude behavior toward your shadow clone." Naruto's expression shifted and his gaze softened. "Nah, it's alright. I get it. You didn't know me, and we were in the middle of an exam. No harm, no foul. What happened to your teammate? Is he okay? I noticed he wasn't with you guys." Jay winced as he took off his hat and rubbed the back of his head. "Ko is doing better. It's a little disappointing what really happened. We were making our way through the forest when Ko startled an animal from the impact of his landing. The thing launched a volley of spikes that skewered his leg. It's not going to be serious, but it prevented him from competing in the preliminaries." "I'm sorry. Damn. If only I had been a bit smarter, I should have approached you guys more carefully. I could have led you to Hinata-chan, and she could have helped." "Nah, it's fine. EHL probably would have done the same thing, even if you had offered your help. He's not a very trusting guy. Besides, as talented as she may be, it was better we got him to the tower as fast as we did." He reached into his pouch and pulled out a white spiked barb. "This here's the culprit. See this?" he asked as he ran his finger along the serrated edge. "This thing isn't designed to come out easily. It's meant to be a nightmare going in, but absolute hell coming out." Even Niji winced at the thought of being struck with, not one, but several of those barbs. Jay sighed as he placed the barb back in his bag. "KO's a trooper. Thanks to your doctors, he'll be back on his feet in no time. He was adamant that he'll stay for the finals. He wouldn't miss it for the world." "I'm glad he's okay. Tell him that I hope he gets well soon," Hinata said. In a heartbeat, Jay's expression shifted back to his earlier look. Oh, I'll be sure to. Don't you worry. All sympathy he had for the guy drained away immediately, as Naruto growled at the interaction. If you all are done, you just missed the last match, Niji coldly said, turning their attention back to the floor. Chuji slumped to the ground, as Dosu loomed over his unconscious body. That's a shame, Jay lamented. I like that guy. He was very pleasant when we talked before entering the forest. Now there's a guy who loves to eat. They all watched as Shikamaru helped Chuji to his feet. It's okay, Chuji. You did your best, Ino called out, as Shikamaru helped his friend up the stairs. Alright, now who's next? Naruto asked as his excitement returned, only to fall again as his name failed to show up on the board. Would Kankuro and Gaara please come down to the floor? Hate called out, as Hinata patted Naruto's back. There's no need. I forfeit, Kankuro called out, surprising everyone in the room. You sure? Hate asked with a raised eyebrow. I'm sure, was his only response as he folded his arms and leaned against the wall. Alright then, your call, Hate said before declaring Gaara the victor. Well, that was rather dull. Who just gives up without even trying? Jay said, crossing his arms. No, he was smart. He would be no better than anyone. How dangerous that guy is, Naruto said, garnering the attention of everyone present. What do you mean? Kakashi asked. I ran into that guy in the forest. Well, my clones did. That guy wiped all of them out within seconds. We're lucky it was only the clones that crossed his path, Naruto said as he stared across the room at the red-haired boy. What did he do? Kakashi asked. He crushed them all. In seconds, and I mean literally crushed. He destroyed them all with sand. Jay was silent as he too stared at the boy. So that Gaara guy really does live up to his reputation. I guess the Raikage was right after all. Kakashi was also silent as he stored that information for later. Would Sakura Haruno and Ino Yamanaka please make your way to the floor? Hate called out. All right. Finally! Ino exclaimed as he made her way towards the stairs. Oh, this should be good, Sasuke scoffed as leaned against the railing. Why? Are they very skilled? Jay asked. No, not at all, Sasuke scoffed as he placed his face in his palm. Hinata knocked his hand from under him and shot him a disappointed look. You'll be surprised. I've met with Sakura a few times since we were assigned to our teams, and she's been taking her training very seriously. I'll believe it when I see it, Sasuke replied as he straightened his back and stared down at the floor. Are you ready, forehead girl? I've been looking forward to this, Ino said with a cocky smile as she stood opposite from her old best friend. So have I, but I'm sorry to say you're not going to like what's about to happen, Sakura replied as she slipped into the new stance Kurenai had been drilling into her head since day one. Alright, if both competitors are ready, then you may begin. Without delay, Ino launched herself towards Sakura. She reared her fist back and took aim right for her face. Sakura was patient and waited until the last second, before she knocked the punch away with her left hand and smacked Ino in the face with the knuckles of her right hand. Ino stumbled slightly, but returned with renewed vigor. She grunted with each strike, growing more aggravated as Sakura silently dodged and knocked away every incoming punch. After extending her punch too far, Sakura lashed out and caught hold of Ino's wrist before delivering a solid hit straight to her jaw. Ino stumbled away from her, holding her jaw in her hands. Lucky punch, she quietly said as she rotated her chin. Not luck. This is the result of all the hard work I've been putting in, Sakura replied as she returned to her starting stance. I'm done being the weak one, even if you aren't. Ino growled and she lunged forward and fired a punch straight towards her chest. Ino's eyes widened in horror, as her fist seemed to fly straight through Sakura's chest. What? Sakura smirked as she delivered a blow to both of Ino's ears, disorienting her. As Ino stumbled away, the Sakura in front of her melted away into the air. Immediately, another Sakura shot up from her right and delivered a punch straight to her face, sending Ino flying back. Ino slid along the ground before she wobbled to her feet. What the hell was that? Sakura smirked as she held up her arm. Like I said, this is the result of all my hard work. Kurenai-sensei took time with me after training to drill home everything. Better taijutsu, better stamina, and most importantly. She waved her arm, and as it moved, multiple arms would appear in the last spot the front arm had been. Genjutsu. It seems I have quite the talent for it, Ino-pig, Sakura finished as she waved her massive hands and wiggled her fingers at her. Ino, I want to thank you for everything you did for me at the academy. You taught me to stand up for myself and be proud of who I am. However, I am not the same little girl you stood up for on the playground. I am a kunoichi. With that, the multiple arms disappeared, and Sakura shot off towards Ino. Ino reached up to block the first punch, only for her hand to slip right through the oncoming fist to her face. Instead, she wheezed as Sakura nailed her in the gut before delivering a kick to her side. This is really not good, Ino thought as she reached into her bag and threw down a smoke bomb. Sakura stopped and simply watched as the cloud enveloped her friend. That wasn't the best idea, Jay commented as he crossed his arms. Blondie just made things all the more easier for the paint-haired one. Ino quietly crept through the smoke, trying to put some distance away from Sakura. I wouldn't have done that if I were you, a voice whispered behind her back, sending chills up her spine. She spun around to find nothing behind her. Sweat dripped down her brow as she heard a rustling sound, and whipped around to find nothing again. Ino, you are in my world now, and here, I control everything, Sakura's voice taunted as the smoke began to shift and turn black. Ino squealed as several sets of yellow eyes began lighting up in the smoke and hissing at her. This is not real. This is not real. This is not real, she repeated to herself as she closed her eyes. Real. That's all perspective. How real does this feel? Sakura's voice called out as the floor shook. Ino's eyes shot open and she gasped by the sight before her. She stumbled back as the tower formed a dark figure that seemed to be heading towards her in the mist. If this isn't real, then this probably won't hurt. Probably. Ino gulped as the massive foot of inner Sakura slammed down onto the floor, shaking her off her feet. Its massive yellow eyes bore down as she raised its fist. "You need to get out of here. That thing will squish me." Ino snapped her fingers together and tried her best to start molding chakra. It's not real. It's not real. It's not real. Release. She cried out just as the Goliath's massive fist was about to collide with her. The black cloud snapped back to purple, and she bolted up from the ground. Her lungs cried out for air, as she took a deep breath of nothing but smoke. She took a running start and leaped out of the smoke, only to find Sakura sailing towards her midair with her fist cocked. Ino didn't have the time or energy as Sakura slammed her fist into her, sending her flying back with a loud shinaro. Ino smacked against the concrete wall and fell to the floor with a thud. After several seconds, Hate called out, "Ino Yamanaka is unable to continue. The winner is Sakura Haruno." Sakura's smile lit up her face as she turned and waved at her sensei. Kurenai mirrored her smile, and tried not to shoot Asuma a look as her heart swelled up with pride. "I hate it when she gets like that," Shino commented, as he lightly clapped, "it can be so distressing. I'm sure Kiba still has nightmares from her little tests." "You're just still upset that she forced you to think you were being chased by an anteater." Shino shot his sensei a sharp look under his glasses, but remained silent on the matter. After bowing to her sensei, a look of concern crept across her face as she jogged over to her friend. "Hey! Are you okay?" she asked as she knelt down by her side. "And not really. I can't get up," Ino winced as she tried to raise herself up. Sakura's eyes softened, and she lifted Ino's arm over her shoulder and lifted her up. "Come on. Let's get you to the medical bay so they can patch you up." Ino wanted to argue with her, but remained silent and simply nodded. As they slowly made their way across the room, Ino couldn't help but take quick glances at her old friend, who was carrying her as if their spat had never even happened. "Wow. You really have grown up. I can't believe I'm a little jealous, but in a weird way, I'm proud of you." Sakura felt her gaze and shot her a curious look. Ino got flustered and quickly glanced away, causing Sakura to simply smile as they made their way down the corridor with the help of the medical team. "See? I told you," Hinata said, crossing her arms and shooting Sasuke with a knowing smile. All right. You were right. I owe her an apology. She really has gotten better." "That was some impressive genjutsu work, if I may say so myself," Jay said as a big smile lit up his face. Kakashi chuckled as he watched Sasuke slightly buckle under Hinata's stare. "Now that is the confident young lady I'm used to seeing." "Now, with that out of the way, who's next?" Kakashi asked, drawing their attention to the board once more. "Come on already! I'm tired of waiting," Naruto exclaimed as he watched the yellow letters fly across the screen. J. Oshiro vs. Watan Yuichiro. Naruto cried out, before he crouched next to the wall and had a little sob. "Stop it, you idiot! You're making an embarrassment of yourself and us," Sasuke groaned as he pinched his forehead. "Says you? You were the first to go. You didn't have to wait at all," Naruto cried out through crocodile tears. Jay clapped and rubbed his hands together. "Welp. That's my cue. It's been nice meeting you all." He turned and offered a deep bow to both Guy and Kakashi. "Sensei." He turned to Hinata and offered her a bow, while tipping his hat, "Lady Hinata," which caused Naruto to send him a glare. He smirked and sent him a wink before jumping over the railing onto the floor. The last genin from Waterfall took his time going down the stairs, and took a few minutes stretching before the match began. "Even the loudmouth got to go before me. Why does the universe hate me?" Naruto sobbed as he smacked his head against the rail. "Naruto, please show a little more decorum. We do have foreign visitors here. Besides, this is going to be the first time you'll really get to see a shinobi from Kumo in action," Kakashi said. Naruto nodded and placed his head in his hands as he lazily watched the match. To be honest, he was really droning it out. Jay danced backwards around the field with his opponent hot his tail, all the while with his hands stuffed in his pockets. He would just never shut up, and kept taunting his opponent, causing him to grow more and more frustrated in his pursuit of the smart-mouthed genin. Naruto let his eyes wander the balconies as he looked to see who was left. As he gazed over the competitors, he started to realize there was almost no one left. Was he really going to be the last match? "Shut up!" Watan cried as he raised his sword above his head to bear down on Jay. Instantly, he pivoted on the ball of his foot and surged forward. He planted his knee into his opponent's stomach, knocking the wind out of him. He snatched the boy's katana straight out of his hands, and slammed its handle straight into the boy's forehead. Watan crumpled to the ground in a heap, with Jay planting a foot on his back, all the while spinning the boy's katana in his hands. "And the victor is Jay," Hate called out before going into another coughing fit. At this point, Naruto had shot up and was counting everyone again. There had to be someone he had missed. There were only 24 of them. There shouldn't have been an odd one out. As his eyes scanned over the room, it suddenly dawned on him who was the only person left beside himself. The scoreboard lit up in bright yellow letters, and displayed the final two names. As his eyes glossed across the name across from him, he felt his heart light on fire with excitement, and he turned to match the grin of his opponent. Naruto Uzumaki vs. Rock Lee. Chapter 38, The Preliminaries, Part 3. Both boys shared a smirk, before leaping over the railing and falling to the floor. "Well, they're certainly ready to get started," Kakashi commented dryly. "Yash! This is perfect, my eternal rival. Now we shall get to see the fruits of our labor pitted against one another, proving whose teaching method is truly superior." "Huh, did you say something, Guy?" Niji sighed at his sensei's antics, and tried to ignore the man as he griped about his rival's coolness. He glanced down at the navy and green blurs jogging their way towards their starting positions and scoffed. "Hurry up and finish this, Lee. The sooner this is over, the sooner we can begin training for the finals. We'll need all the time we can get," he thought as he glanced over at Sasuke and Gaara. Then again, he thought as the corner of his lip began to twitch upwards, it would be entertaining to watch Uzumaki being tossed around. Neither opponent could wipe the grins from their faces as they stared each other down. "I have been looking forward to this, Naruto-kun. I am sure you will prove to be a fierce opponent," Lee said as he slipped into his signature stance. Same here. I hope what my team said about you wasn't all talk because this is going to be awesome, Naruto chirpily replied as he bounced on the balls of his feet. Come on. We're ready when you are, he shouted towards the ref, who simply sighed in annoyance. If both opponents are prepared, then you may begin, he droned as he brought down his hand. Both genin shot off in a blur and collided in the center of the arena. Neither dropped their smile, even as Lee delivered the first punch straight into Naruto's face. They darted around the arena, clashing and trading blows, with Naruto mostly being forced on the defensive under Lee's fierce barrage of punches. Naruto's eyes lit up as he spied an opening, and shot a punch at his gut. He was shocked as Lee's hand quickly shot down and caught his hand, before he raised his leg higher than Naruto could stretch and nailed him in the head. Naruto stumbled back and shook his head to clear the disorientation. Naruto glanced back at Lee, who had slid back to his original stance, and couldn't help but smile. This was great. He took a deep breath and launched himself at his green-clad opponent once again. Just as I thought, Kakashi muttered. What's wrong, sensei? Hinata asked. Sasuke, when we first started training together, why did Naruto always lose to you in spar? The dove may still be faster than me, but his technique at the time was just atrocious. He could move, I'll give him that, but his style was incredibly sloppy. Agreed. You two were able to stay around equal footing because you each outperformed each other in one area or another. As his technique improved, it was harder for you to predict his moves, until you obtained your Sharingan, that is. Lee is a different story. Here we have an opponent who beats Naruto in speed and even outshines you in taijutsu finesse. He crossed his arms as he stared down at the two. Neither of them was willing to back down as they clashed once again. Naruto has gotten better, don't get me wrong, but if he's still having trouble with you, Sasuke, it's hard for me to see how he'll be able to beat Lee in taijutsu. No sooner than the words left his mouth, Naruto blocked Lee's most recent barrage of blows and smacked a clean hit straight into Lee's cheek, causing Kakashi to raise an eyebrow. Lee shrugged off the blow and came at him with renewed vigor. The two traded punches once again, with Naruto mostly on the defensive, until he reached up and caught Lee's right hook in his left hand, and bashed the outside of his knuckles into Lee's left cheek. Kakashi narrowed his eyes as he leaned forward. Something was off here, but he just couldn't place it. It took him a while to realize it, but as Naruto got more and more hits in, Kakashi realized Lee was getting slower. It was gradual, but there was definitely a difference compared to how he was performing at the beginning of the match. Naruto ran forward and jumped up. He brought down his leg, which Lee was able to block by crossing his arms. Naruto twisted as he fell and pushed off the ground with his hands. He spun around with a clear right hook, but Lee was still unable to block the incoming punch. How is he doing it? Sasuke murmured. I'm curious as well. Your thoughts, Guy? Kakashi asked as everyone turned to him. Guy was silent. His focus was sharp, and his eyes never left the two as he watched them dance around each other. This was the serious side of Guy that Kakashi appreciated when they were on missions. As ridiculous as Guy could act, he wasn't renowned as the taijutsu master of Konoha for nothing. Watch closely in their next encounter. It will be about 4 seconds into their next exchange. The group anxiously watched as Lee and Naruto clashed again. Their game had become a much more even display of ability, as Naruto and Lee were both being forced on the defensive. Just as Naruto bobbed his head out the way of Lee's fist, his left hand shot up and gently tapped Lee's elbow, before he was forced to block Lee's upcoming hit. Did you see it? Guy asked. There it is, Kakashi replied. He noticed Sasuke confused, glanced and tapped at his headband. Activate your Sharingan. You should see it clear as day. Sasuke was confused, but he went along anyway. You too, Miss Hinata Niji. You should allow yourself to see it as well. The Hyuga cousins were surprised, but both activated their curiosity. As the three users observed the two boys, they each noticed several glowing dots scattered along Lee's arms and legs. Are those seals? Hinata gasped. Indeed. Gravity seals if I had to guess, Guy replied. Your teammate is slowly, but surely, reducing Lee's speed with every encounter. I believe it's happening too quickly for him to truly alter the intensity of the seal, but his plan is working. Very clever, done, Sasuke smirked as he watched Lee kick off and do several back flips away from his opponent. Naruto-kun truly is a worthy opponent. I do not understand how he is doing it, but I am being worn down faster than I should be. What is he up to? Naruto smiled in satisfaction from his last hit to Lee's shoulder. That wasn't to say he was without his own scratches. His cheek was swelling from a particularly nasty hit, but his smile never left his face. He could now tell what Sasuke and Hinata had been talking about. The guy was a beast. He easily outranked him in speed, and his taijutsu ability was on another level. Thank you, Jiraiya-sensei. Marking makes things so much easier. Ever since they had their little lesson, applying in combat had become a breeze. Now it was like Hinata-chan's technique, where all he would need was a simple touch. Of course, he didn't want to hurt the guy too badly. If the gravity seals were too harsh, they could end up crushing his bones, or the guy could injure himself in the struggle to stand up. This may have been a competition, but this guy was a fellow shinobi of Konoha and a friend to Sasuke and Hinata. Besides, the guy had truly seemed sincere about helping them in the forest. He couldn't hold that against him. No, that irritation was reserved for Neji. Alright, Lee, how much longer can you keep this up? 'Cause I'm having a blast. Naruto called out. Lee shot him a smile in return, and fought to raise his arms back to his starting position. I don't know what you are doing to me, Naruto-kun, but I will overcome it. I shall fight as long as there is breath in my chest. Naruto's smile grew even wider. Time for round 2. He got ready to shoot off, but was surprised when Guy called out from the balcony. Alright, Lee. I think it's time that you took them off. Sasuke and Hinata sent him a confused look, and Lee's face was full of shock. Really, Guy-sensei? But I thought you said that was for emergencies only? Yeah, I did. But this is an exception. Guy gave him a thumbs up and flashed his teeth. Go ahead and show him what you got. Really? Really? Lee exclaimed as a bright smile crept to his face. Naruto was still confused as he watched Lee squat on the ground and begin lifting up his leg warmers. His confusion turned to surprise as Lee unraveled several bindings from his legs. Are those? How old-fashioned, Shikamaru droned. Ah. That feels so much better. Now I can move freely. Naruto squinted his eyes as he made out the symbols on the weights. His eyes shot open as he recognized the insignia of the seals. What the hell? Those are dash. Temari smirked as she watched the green-clad boy drop the weights from his hands. Does he really expect to make that much of a difference by dropping a few pounds of weight dash? Everyone's jaw hit the floor as the impact shook the floor, sending a cloud of dust into the air. What the hell? Sasuke exclaimed. Guy, you are too much, Kakashi sighed. Naruto gulped as he recognized the level of gravity seals decorating each piece of metal. That's over 50 pounds each. And he was still this fast? Naruto felt a sinking feeling in his gut as he realized how much trouble he was really in. Lee held a more mischievous look on his face as he bounced around, adjusting to his new weight. Are you ready to proceed, Naruto-kun? Honestly, I think I may need a minute, he muttered before he blinked and Lee sent him flying backwards several feet. I didn't even see him move. That just insa. He couldn't even finish his thought as he felt Lee plant his foot into his back, sending him hurtling back the way he had come. No time to think, Naruto thought as he reached into his pouch for the first kunai he could find. He could feel Lee dashing toward him, and blindly slashed out with his kunai. Lee came to a screeching halt, and knocked his hand so hard that he dropped his kunai. In the time that the kunai had barely fallen 3 inches, Lee landed a short punch to Naruto's ribs. Naruto grit his teeth and growled, as he grabbed hold of Lee's other hand. Lee slightly paused and was shocked as he stared into Naruto's eyes. Slanted pupils stared straight back at Lee's pitch-black eyes, before glancing at something in between them. Naruto raised his foot and ignored the pain as he kicked the falling kunai back up towards Lee's face. Lee was easily able to knock the boy away, and managed to escape the path of the kunai with only a scratch. It continued along its path and lodged itself into the ceiling. He didn't know what Naruto had just done, but he did not want to give him a chance to do it again. Lee shot off and easily ducked under Naruto's guard, delivering 3 rapid hits into his stomach and 1 in his cheek. Naruto was sent flying backward and rolled like a ragdoll across the ground. Lee paused as he watched the blonde cough several times, before shakily rising to his feet. If your injuries are too severe, I regretfully suggest that you surrender, Naruto-kun. I don't want to have to hurt you any more than I have to. Naruto weakly laughed and slyly grinned back at him. His slanted eyes and whisker marks truly helped accent his devious look. Sorry to tell you this, but I don't exactly know how to quit. Lee smiled lightly before getting ready to charge again. Naruto crossed his fingers together and shouted, Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. Lee paused as the whole room went up in smoke, and was surprised as he was met with a sea of blonde hair and navy shirts staring back at him. Lee stared back at the horde of Cheshire grins, and his own smile grew even wider. The original Naruto smirked as he shouted, Let's play a game of needle in the haystack, except this time, the haystack is also fighting back. Boys, sick me. Yes, sir. The crowd echoed as Naruto leaped back behind the front lines. As one, the crowd charged at Lee, who remained planted in his spot, content to let them come to him. To say it was disorienting for everyone watching would be an understatement. It was like watching a hive of insects swarming around its prey. There was so much sensory overload that Sasuke had to turn off his Sharingan. There was just so much going on that it was giving him a headache to try and keep track of it all. Lee remained cool and confident, and proceeded to decimate every wave that descended upon him. All it would take was a quick jab or a sharp kick to send each clone back to their master. As he dismantled the incoming clones, his eyes scanned the back rows for the original, searching for the one who seemed to be standing still and observing. There you are! Lee shot off, sending clones flying in his wake as he tore after Naruto in the back to his right. The blonde's eyes widened as he descended upon him, and just as his fist was about to make contact, he substituted with another clone and reappeared on the other side of the arena. And this is how their game continued to play out. Naruto would summon wave after wave of 5 clones at a time, to take on Lee, who would dismantle them and slowly reduce the size of the crowd. As time went on, Lee was starting to slow down, which gave each clone the opportunity they were waiting for. Just as before, all it would take is a gentle tap, and he would be tagged with a gravity seal. Once again, Lee began to feel himself getting slowed down. The clones were starting to get lucky with their hits, and they were tiring him out. I apologize, Naruto-kun, but it seems you are giving me little choice. Naruto smirked as he saw Lee coming to an abrupt stop. Now is my chance. He summoned another clone and quickly dispelled it, signaling all of the clones to converge on Lee at once. The mass of clones halted their courses, and all jumped at him at once. Just as they were about to reach him, there was an explosion of light and a cry shouting, "Fifth gate, open!" Every clone within a 10-foot radius of Lee went up in smoke from the shockwave alone, stunning the 7 clones and Origin off to the side. They stood in silence and awe as Lee reappeared from the blinding light. His eyes had changed to a bright white, and his skin was bright red. Steam poured off from his face and arms, as he struggled to contain the overwhelming energy. That is not good, Kakashi said, as he turned around and glared at Guy. What's going on, sensei? Hinata asked. Kakashi ignored her as he and Guy locked eyes. You actually taught a genin how to open the inner gates? Guy, you should know better than that. Yes, I did, Guy coolly replied. Lee was aware of the risks, and he was ready for it. Besides, he doesn't know how to open them fully. There is a level of maturity and ability that he must reach first. What do you two mean? Sasuke chimed in, tired of waiting for answers. It means Naruto is about to be in for a world of hurt, Kakashi replied as they looked down in the arena. This guy is just ridiculous. Naruto had never trained to be a censor, but even he could feel the raw amount of chakra that was pumping through Lee's body. This is not good. I need to think of something fast. What can I do? He was cut off as Lee tore through his final line of clones. "Found you!" he exclaimed as he launched Naruto into the air. Naruto opened his mouth to scream, but nothing came out as the wind was knocked out of his lungs. Wind stung his face as he catapulted towards the ceiling. He barely had time to breathe before he was launched yet again, back towards the ground, by another painful kick. And then another. And another. Lee tossed him around the air like a human pinball machine, knocking him back and forward, disappearing only to reappear and launch him another direction. Naruto had no time to think. No time to move. He could only endure the pain, as he was volleyed through the air. "It's time," Lee thought as he began to loosen the bindings around his hand. "I was hoping to save this for you, Neji, but it seems I'm going to have to use it now." Lee launched Naruto one last time straight up in the air, before kicking off right behind him. Lee's bindings began moving as if they had a mind of their own, and began to wrap around Naruto's body until all movement was restricted. Lee grabbed hold of his sides and began spinning as they made their descent towards the ground. "Primary Lotus! Naruto-kun! Come on! Do something!" Naruto closed his eyes and reached out for something, anything he could use. A familiar, bright sensation echoed through his head, and his eyes shot open. Lee continued his path towards the ground, and just before the impact, he felt his grip on his opponent disappear entirely. Lee slammed into the ground, sending concrete flying as a result of the massive crater. Everyone was quiet as they waited to see who would emerge first. As the dust began to settle, they could hear Lee cry out in pain as he struggled to stand up. Ignoring the aching pain all over his body, Lee reached up with his hand and tried to drag himself out of the crater. At the center of the indentation was a pile of bandages, with Naruto nowhere to be seen. "Where did he go?" Ino exclaimed as they began scouring the room. A violent gagging sound caught everyone's attention as a splash of a green and red liquid splattered to the ground from the ceiling. Everyone raised their heads and was shocked to see Naruto crouching upside down on the roof of the room. In his right hand, he clutched the strangely shaped kunai he had launched into the ceiling earlier in the match. "How did he?" "That doesn't make any sense," Shikamaru thought as he narrowed his eyes. He caught sight of the strange design on the kunai before glancing back at Naruto, who was trying his best not to fall from the ceiling. What did Naruto just do? Hinata let out a sigh of relief as she watched Naruto carefully drop down from the ceiling and stumble to the floor. That had been too close. "I don't know if he somehow planned that, but that was an excellent move. If he hadn't used the Hiraishin, I don't want to think about the state he'd be in right now," Kakashi thought as he watched his student struggle onto his arms and legs. "How did he do it? How did he escape?" Neji thought as he leaned against the rail. He didn't know when had grown so invested in this match, but now he couldn't peel his eyes away. "Please make the room stop spinning," Naruto mumbled as he held a hand over his mouth. His whole body felt like hell. Besides the aching pain from being a human punching bag, the whole world wouldn't stop shaking as he desperately attempted to reorient himself. He clutched his stomach as the trace amounts of Kyuubi chakra circulating in his system began repairing the damage to his stomach. "Thanks, I guess, you stupid fox." His attention was disrupted as he saw Lee drag himself out from his crater. Without Naruto, Lee had taken the full brunt of his own attack. He clutched his left arm to his side, and Naruto winced as he saw what condition it was in. From how it hung limply at his side and the angle it was twisted, his arm was clearly broken. Despite his injuries, Lee still seemed to be in better condition than he was. Naruto could barely stand, let alone move. His entire body felt like he'd been trampled over by a horde of oxen. Lee panted as he raised his head and glared at his opponent. Naruto gulped as he saw the irritation growing in those blank eyes. "Oh, I'm in trouble." Lee never seemed like a scary guy, but with that expression and his red, steaming skin contrasting against his white eyes, he was downright terrifying. He crouched down and began sprinting towards Naruto as fast as he could. "Oh shit, oh shit, oh shit." Naruto's eyes shot open, and he clasped his hands together. As Lee rocketed towards him, he slammed his hands to the ground. Upon contact, black markings began to appear. As kanji spread out around him, he looked up to see Lee's fist inches from his face. The world seemed to stop as he watched the fist grow closer and closer. With the few milliseconds of time he had left, his mind had one simple thought: activate. At once, the black markings glowed white and sprung to life. Lee's fist crashed into a wall, as Naruto was enveloped in a blue cube. Naruto let out a sigh of relief and fell back on his butt. Barrier seal, complete, he sighed as he glanced up at Lee. That ought to hold him off for a while. Lee took a few seconds to stare at the barrier before lifting his good arm back and slamming it down with all his might. Or not, Naruto gulped as he watched cracks begin to appear on its surface. He crawled back onto his hands and knees and clasped his hands over the seal. As Lee continued to wail on its walls, Naruto fought with every ounce of his concentration to keep up his barrier. This isn't going to last me forever. I need a plan. He opened an eye and glanced up at Lee, who continued to swing at the barrier, chipping away at it with each blow. Naruto squinted his eyes as he noticed a massive amount of steam that was now trailing from Lee's body. He could literally see the sweat dripping down Lee's face, evaporating after coming in contact with his burning skin. A light bulb seemed to go off in his head. All that work he's been doing has got to eat up a lot of energy. He eyes the barrier around him, as his plan starts falling into place. He's got something, Sasuke muttered as he anxiously watched the match with his Sharingan. How can you tell? Hinata asked. He has that look on his face. This match is about to be decided right here. How are you so sure? He's going to have to lower that barrier to confront Lee. If Lee can get to him before he can enact his plan, he's finished. Hinata was silent as she watched Naruto get ready for his final plan. Naruto took a deep breath as he looked up at Lee. He had to time this just right. Just as Lee began his swing. As Lee reared back for another punch into the cracking, blue walls, Naruto exhaled and dropped the barrier. Lee stumbled forwards as the wall of chakra disappeared, and he was momentarily stunned by Naruto's choice. Naruto mustered as much energy as he could, and quickly jumped backwards. Lee was quick to catch himself, and prepared to shoot after him. As his legs pushed off of the ground, Naruto raised his hands in another hand sign. He watched as Lee yet again rocketed towards him with his fist outstretched and waited as long as he could. Activate! The barrier seal sprung to life again, as Lee smashed into its walls. Lee was stunned and confused as he realized he was now trapped inside Naruto's barrier. Naruto weakly chuckled as he crossed his fingers together and shouted, "Kage Bunshin no Jutsu." 3 puffs of smoke erupted beside him, and he shot them a confused glance. 3? I meant to call 5. I must be running lower on chakra than I thought. After some inner debate, he reached into his bag and swallowed a soldier pill. Did it taste nasty, but it would get the job done. He felt the swell of chakra and energy sweep through his system, and he nodded at his clones. Lee began to panic and glanced back and forth between them as they started to surround the cube. In unison, each of them began running through hand signs. Lee rushed at the wall, banging as hard as he could, but he was too late, as they brought their hands to their mouths and shouted, "Katan, Fox Hellfire no Jutsu." Streams of yellow fire burst from their lungs, and shot towards the cube. Lee winced as he watched the jutsu heading towards the barrier and closed his eyes as it made impact. After several seconds he was surprised to see that the barrier was still standing. What was he doing? So that's what he's after, Guy mused as he watched his student slam against the roof of the barrier in an attempt to free himself. Congratulations, Kakashi. Your student fought a fine match. You should be proud. What do you mean, Guy-sensei? Hinata asked. This match is over. It ended the moment Naruto trapped Lee inside that barrier jutsu. If you'll notice, Lee's movements are becoming slower. Indeed, with each attempt, Lee's strikes against the ceiling of his prison became weaker and weaker. It was also getting harder to see him as steam started fogging up the barrier. Is all that steam coming from Lee's body? Sasuke asked as he started to put the pieces together. Correct, Guy replied. When Lee activates the inner gates, his body has to compensate for all the energy he is burning at once. The amount of chakra shooting through his body heats up his skin exponentially, which causes any sweat he may form to cool himself off to evaporate immediately. Young Naruto is effectively sweating him out. The more Lee tries to escape, the more energy and water he expends, and let's not forget he is still struggling against the gravity seals placed on him throughout the match. Naruto is going to dehydrate Lee until he doesn't have the energy to carry on. The genin were stunned as they watched Lee's attempts grow more and more futile, until they could no longer hear the sound of him banging on the barrier. After a few more seconds to be sure, each of the clones finally cancelled their jutsu, and the original cancelled the seal. The pent-up steam flooded the air, and everyone held their nose as the stench of sweat filled the room. Naruto dropped to one knee and his clones began to pop one by one. As the mist cleared, everyone could see the prone form of Lee excessively panting from his mouth. Hate strolled up to the boy, and knelt next to his side. "If you can still move, try to raise your hand." Lee winced as he tried to follow his simple instruction. He pushed as hard as he possibly could, but after everything that had happened, all stacked on top of each other, he simply didn't have the energy to do it. Hate nodded his head and patted the boy on the shoulder. "You did spectacular, kid," he whispered before rising back up. Rock Lee is unable to continue. The winner is Naruto Uzumaki. A tired smile lit up his face, as Naruto found the energy to lift his arms to the sky and shout, "YTA!" Everyone in the room was shell-shocked as the long match final drew to a close. "That was phenomenal. Well done, Naruto," the Hokage whispered to himself. "Way to go, brat. You pulled it off," Anko smirked. Despite his exhaustion, Naruto pushed his body to move and he made his way over to Lee. Lee was heavily panting as the medical team began their work on him. As he noticed Naruto drawing closer, he tried to speak, but his throat was just too dry. "Don't overexert yourself. You were incredible," Naruto weakly laughed as he patted him on the shoulder. Lee weakly smiled as his eyes and skin began to change back to their regular hue. "Here. Let me deactivate those gravity seals for you." Naruto brought his hands together and mouthed, "Release." Lee sighed as he felt the accumulated weight finally lift from his chest. Naruto noticed Lee trying to move his hand, and was surprised when the boy gave him a thumbs up. He smirked and said, "When the exams are over, you better believe we are going to fight again. I'll be even stronger next time, so you better train even harder if you want to stand a chance." Lee gave him one last smile, before the medical team began moving him off towards the infirmary. "Naruto-kun!" a voice called behind him. He turned around to see Sasuke and Hinata jogging towards him, with Kakashi lazily strolling in the back. "That was unbelievable. You did it!" she said as she slid down next to him. "Even I'll admit, that was actually impressive," Sasuke smirked as he stepped up beside him. Naruto shot them a grin, before his eyes began to droop. "Thanks you guys, I am going to sleep now. Good night." And with that, he face-planted into the ground. Chapter 39, Setting Out on Wayward Paths. "Thank you guys, I'm going to sleep now, good night." And with that, Naruto face-planted into the ground. Kakashi chuckled as he watched Hinata fret over her unconscious teammate. To think, even with the effects of a soldier pill coursing through his system, his body still gave out. He turned and watched as Guy gave some last words of approval before his student disappeared down the hall to the medical wing. "You should be proud, Guy." Kakashi stood by his student's side as the medical team came in to lift Naruto up on a stretcher. As they started leading him towards the medical bay, Kakashi raised his hand and caught Hinata's shoulder, when she started to follow. "Don't worry. He'll be fine. I have a feeling he's going to be sleeping this off for the next day. Besides, you need to stay and listen for the next lineups," Kakashi said. "But afterwards, we are free to do whatever we want. We'll wait for him as long as necessary." Hinata still seemed reluctant, but she eventually gave in and nodded. "Good. Now let's join the others and line up. Sasuke, let's get going." As the Sandaime gave his speech commending the victors, Sasuke finally had a moment to settle his thoughts. No matter how many times he tried, he just couldn't shake that final image out of his head. Naruto, with that ridiculous smile of his, stands victorious over Lee's panting form. Sasuke already knew not to underestimate his blonde teammate. After all of the training and missions they had gone through, He knew the blonde's abilities better than anyone. Yet, he still felt a sense of shock at seeing him overcome an obstacle he probably couldn't have handled himself. That made him excited. He couldn't quite explain it. He didn't know whether it was jealousy or anticipation, but the competitive flame that had been stoked in his heart was now burning twice as fiercely as before. It was a wake-up call for sure. You both better train hard. I won't be left in the dust by either of you, he thought as he cast a glance at his one present teammate. With that being said, I now hand it over to the exam proctor for our final words. The Sandaime finished. Enko had a big smile as she stepped forward and gave the group a mock salute. I gotta say, brats, not too bad. I'm gonna skip the whole you should be proud of yourselves crap, and just get on to the good part. You all pushed this hard to get here, now let's find out what your next hurdle to overcome is going to be. One by one, Enko made her way down the line of remaining participants and offered them the box containing their numbers. Let's start with you, Firecrotch, Enko said with a smile as she stood in front of Gaara. The boy shot her an unholy glare, but simply showed her the piece of paper, revealing the number 7. I have 11, replied Temari. And I got number 10, Jay replied, shooting Temari a wink. 2, EHL grunted, rolling his eyes at his teammates' antics. 8, Dosa gruffly responded, before shooting Gaara a glare. 4, Sakura said cheerfully. 12, Shikamaru droned, causing Jay to deflate as he realized he wasn't matched with Temari. 9, Hinata called out, causing Jay to perk back up. 5, Sasuke replied as he looked down the line at the remaining participants. 6, Shino said coolly, earning a nod from Sasuke. 3, Niji responded coldly, as he glared at his pink-haired opponent. And that means the runt will be stuck with number 1. It's been a blast watching you munchkins tear each other apart, so I wish you all the best of luck in your next matches. For those of you who weren't paying attention, look to the board for your matchups, Enko called out with a theatrical wave at the monitor. As the screen lit up yellow, everyone's eyes darted to their first opponent. Some smiled, some trembled, and others couldn't care less. Naruto Uzumaki vs. EHL Honda. Niji Hyuga vs. Sakura Haruno. Sasuke Uchiha vs. Shino Aburame. Sabaka no Gaara vs. Dosa Kinuta. Hinata Hyuga vs. Jay Oshiro. Sabaka no Temari vs. Shikamaru Nara. The next morning. We're going to need to get it today. We don't know what Sensei has planned for him. Did you find the right model? Yeah, I did, but I still don't have enough saved up to pitch in for the cost. I told you I'd be happy to pay for it. And I told you I want to help with that. You shouldn't have to pay for the whole thing. I'd feel like I didn't really contribute anything. Oh, don't be silly. You're the one who thought of it. What are you two whispering about? A voice called out behind them. The pair yelped and jumped away from their huddle to see Sasuke making his way across the clearing towards their bridge. And then nothing, Sasuke-kun. Nothing at all, Hinata nervously laughed as she shook her head. Sure. Anything I ought to know? No way, team. It's a SECR. Naruto was painfully cut off as Hinata jabbed him in the side. No, Sasuke-kun. We were just discussing the lineups for the exams. Whatever, Sasuke said, letting the issue drop as he leaned against the wooden rail. Hinata-chan. Why? Naruto lightly cried as he cradled his hip. Has Sensei shown up yet? Sasuke asked, ignoring the blonde's antics. I know he sometimes wants us to look for him, but I don't think today is really the day for that. No, Hinata replied, shaking her head. I checked just to be sure with Mai a little earlier, but he isn't in any of the trees surrounding the field. It's strange. He's usually here 5 minutes before. Naruto Uzumaki. You leave those alone. She whipped around and glared down at Naruto, who was attempting to remove his bandages once again. Naruto gulped as her fierce white eyes bore down on him, which reminded him a little too much of her cousin. Sorry, Hinata-chan. I can't help it if they're itchy. Everything will be healed in a day or two anyway, he whined. Those bandages are going to stay on, and I don't want to hear another word about it, Hinata replied as reached into her pack for more salve. Now stand still, I want to apply more cream to that bruise on your face. But it stings. Naruto whined, yet he remained still as Hinata brought her hand up to his face. It will only hurt a second, Hinata soothed him as she dabbed her finger across the purple welt, causing him to flinch. After a few more seconds, she smiled and placed her salve back into her bag. That should reduce the swelling, and make it a little easier with eating. Of course, Naruto lit up at that. Yo! Came a voice at the base of the bridge, catching them off guard. They all turned around to see Kakashi casually standing there with his hands in his pockets. You're a little late, sensei. I hope it won't become a habit again, Hinata jokingly chided. Sorry, I just had to make some final adjustments for each of your training for the next month. That caught everyone's attention, and they all fell silent. He nodded his head, and they quietly followed as he led them across the clearing towards the training posts. He motioned for them to sit, and they each leaned back against the wooden posts. I first want to let you know how proud I am that all of you managed to make it this far. You all dug deep and pushed through everything I threw at you in the last few months. No matter what the results may bring during the finals, I want you all to know that you are material in my book. Great work. They each took the compliment in stride. Hinata blushed and offered him a light smile. Sasuke was pleased as well, and even offered him one of his rare, light-hearted smiles. Of course, Naruto was beaming ear to ear, scratching the back of his head in embarrassment. Kakashi clapped and rubbed his hands together. All right. Here's the rundown. Now, I would love for us to keep working together as we have, but I'm afraid that can no longer be the case. He noted their surprised reactions, but pressed on. For the time being, I want you three to put aside my normal lectures of teamwork and camaraderie, and focus on yourselves for once. While you have multiple hurdles to overcome beforehand, it is entirely possible that you three could face each other in a three-way fight in the finals. You all already know so much about each other's abilities, that you will need this upcoming month to yourselves to prepare some new materials that the others won't be aware of. The three of them were quiet as they shot glances at each other. None of them seemed too visibly appealing at the notion, but he could tell that underneath, each of them was excited by the prospect. So what's the plan, sensei? Naruto asked. Like I said, we are splitting you up. Each of you is going to work in private, with someone overseeing your training. Who gets to be with you, sensei? Hinata asked. Kakashi internally sighed, preparing for the outburst he knew was coming, and said, Sasuke. He raised his hand as Naruto began to speak. Let me finish. I know what you're going to say, but don't mistake this as a play of favoritism. I've made this decision because Sasuke is going to be facing the hardest lineup of the three of you. Shino won't be that hard for him, Naruto muttered. I wasn't referring to Shino. I believe you have already met Sasuke's other opponent, and have had some personal experience of how lethal he can be. Naruto winced as the memories of his clones being ripped to shreds flashed in his mind. Okay, that's fair, he muttered. Kakashi gave him a nod, happy that he understood, before turning towards his student in question. Not to try to scare you, Sasuke, but our training isn't just going to be about making you stronger, it's about making sure you can even survive your encounter with the Kazekage's son. Sasuke was silent, but nodded, letting him know he understood the gravity of the situation. As for you two, Kakashi continued, turning back towards the others, both of your teachers approached me before I even had a chance to ask. Hinata. Your father requested to oversee your training personally. While I'm sure you know his teaching methods can be a bit strict, he is probably the best person to help refine your fighting style. Before you start worrying, we talked and he agreed with me that you shouldn't focus entirely on it. He and I spent some time together and discussed some elemental jutsu that we think will be useful for you. He also wanted me to mention that he plans to start working with you on your mother's jutsu. Hinata gasped at that last part, and a smile crept up her face. She had spent years gazing over her mother's jutsu scroll, but had been limited by her chakra control and reserves to truly utilize them. He actually thought she was ready. That's awesome, Hinata-chan. I bet it's going to be kick-ass. Ooh. What about me, Kakashi-sensei? Naruto asked as he bobbed up and down. I believe you and your teacher have already spent ample time together. He still has to settle some things before he is ready, but told me that you should meet him at the bathhouses around noon tomorrow. Naruto's grin doubled in size as he caught on. All right. Jiraiya-sensei is back. Sasuke chuckled at his teammate's outburst and turned his attention to Kakashi. How soon do we begin? Tomorrow, Kakashi replied, causing Naruto and Hinata to freeze. We are going to be heading out of the village for the duration of our training, so I want you to spend the rest of the day getting any supplies you'll need for the trip. We'll meet at the village gate tomorrow morning around 8. Kakashi turned back to Hinata and Naruto, who had begun furiously whispering to each other. Something you two want to share? He asked as he crossed his arms. Nothing, they cried out in unison. Kakashi gazed down at them with his one good eye, before shrugging his shoulders. All right. Now, the finals will be held 1 month from today. Both the Hokage and myself expect nothing short of your maximum effort during this time, and to see all 3 of you with that vest hanging on your shoulders once it's over. We will meet back here, 1 day before the exam, to go over our strategies for our opponents and offer each other advice for anything we might have missed. Kakashi began to stand up, and his students followed suit. He placed his hands on Hinata and Naruto's heads and ruffled their hair with a smile. I expect to see some big results from you too. I wish you the best of luck. With that, he made a hand sign and disappeared in a swirl of leaves. The 3 of them were silent as they digested everything they had been told. Their eyes each held the same steely determination, and they shared a smile. Hinata was silent, enjoying the moment, before Naruto's eyes shot open. Hinata-chan! We need to hurry! With that, he grabbed the girl's hand and raced off towards the village. What the hell are you two doing? Sasuke called after them. Sorry, Sasuke-kun. Just don't leave tomorrow until we show up. Hinata called over her shoulder, as she desperately tried to keep pace with the over-energetic blonde. Sasuke sighed before sticking his hands in his pockets, and slowly following in their footsteps. He had some stops to make. Tai! I said drop it. Ria called out before swooping up her little brother in her arms and snatching the green apple out of his hands. Please, can't you keep him in control? I apologize, Madam Maria. I can't leave him at home this week. The landlord is renovating the building for the next few days. Just try to keep a better eye on him, the woman sighed as she made her way towards her office. Ria offered the retreating woman a weak smile, and waited until she was sure she heard the door close, before glaring down at her brother. And just what do you have to say for yourself? I was hungry. She weakly sighed and hung her head. Of course you are. She lifted him up so he was more comfortable in her arms, and carried him over into the restaurant. Hanaya-san, could you keep my brother occupied at the bar? No problems. Just leave him on the stool. I'll keep an eye on him, the man laughed from behind the glass as he worked on a fresh batch of noodles. Thank you, she sighed as she gently sat the boy on the stool. She made sure he was looking her in the eyes before saying, You stay right here. Understood? But I'm bored, the boy whined as he lay his head on the bar. How much longer do we have to stay here? I told you before. I'll be done with work at 5, then we can go out for dinner. But I'm hungry now, he muttered as his stomach rumbled to accent his point. Tell you what. Your sister's lunch break is coming up soon. How about I whip you two up something special? In return, you have to be a good boy and let your sister work, Hanaya said as he whipped his hands off with a rag. Promise? The boy exclaimed as he perked up. Absolutely, Hanaya laughed as he stretched his hand over the glass and made a pinky promise. Ria mouthed thank you to him as she headed back towards the grocery. She heard the bell ring, and turned to meet the new customer. Welcome to Madame Maria's grocery in Delhi. How may I help? She paused as she recognized the latest patron. She placed a hand on her hip, and couldn't help but chuckle. Been a while, duckbutt. How have you been? Still dancing in the face of the devil? You have no idea, Sasuke replied as he unconsciously rubbed his shoulder. I bet. So what can I do for the ever-so-noble head of the Uchiha clan today? She mockingly asked with a little curtsy. Just picking up some supplies. I'm going to be out of town for a while, he replied as he began browsing. Where do you keep your shinobi rations? Back right, next to the register. So what are you up to? Or is it one of those have to kill me if I tell you situations? Sasuke snorted as he glanced over the ration packs. He picked up the mango and orange flavor, weighing his options. The things tasted like crap, but they held the essential nutrients shinobi needed for long-term assignments. The flavoring was just an attempt to make it easier to swallow. Training, he replied after setting the orange pack back, and placing the other in his basket. The exams are coming up, and I'm going to be part of the finals. You mean that event where they make kids fight each other in that big arena? Sasuke flinched at the blunt description. Wellies. I really don't get you, shinobi. No, there can't be some practical test held by a panel. Let's let the kids fight it out to the death for everyone to see. Come one, come all. Watch Shinobi Hopeful A kick the crap out of Shinobi B. She called out with a theatrical twirl before heading towards the register. I take it you haven't gone to watch them yourself, Sasuke replied as headed over towards the refrigerated section. No interest, she said as she leaned against her elbow. Besides, even if I wanted to, do you know how expensive those tickets are? It's ridiculous. I don't doubt it. Every year, multiple nobles and clans from throughout the elemental nations would venture to the current host nation to witness the spectacle of the exams. To the common folk, it had to be mind-blowing. From walking up walls to breathing fire, the life of a shinobi could seem like it was straight out of fantasy. However, she did make a good point. In a way, he could agree that the whole event could be seen as morbid. It's more than just us knocking each other around for their amusement, you know, Sasuke said as he inspected the basket of tomatoes. Oh, I bet it's trudged down by some intricate political bullshit. Everything is, she replied, which earned a chuckle. After several minutes, she finally got tired and spoke up. Are you done looking over those tomatoes? They're all fresh. Just pick some already. I want them to be just right. They're just tomatoes, she mocked, imitating his inflection. He shot her a glance. I happen to really like tomatoes. She couldn't help but chuckle at the seriousness of his tone, and eventually burst out laughing as he continued to glare. I'm sorry, she chuckled as she tried to regain her composure, you should have seen your face. I'm sure it was amusing, he scoffed as he placed his basket on the counter. As she reached for a plastic bag, he shook his hand. It's all right. I have a different solution. She was puzzled as he took out a tiny scroll and laid it across the countertop. She curiously watched him as he began piling the food over an intricate design of kanji. She was about to speak up, when he raised his hand in front of his chest and made a hand sign. Seal. She winced as the scroll flashed white. She blinked, trying to remove the spots from her eyes, and gasped as she looked down. Sasuke chuckled as he watched her first interaction with storage seals. See, this is what I mean by ninja magic, she sighed as she glanced up at him. My teammate would heartily disagree. It's all science babble that I don't want to spend time thinking about. Trust me, he could go on for hours about this stuff. Hooah! A voice rang behind him. He turned around to see a tiny, black-haired boy staring up at them in awe. Are you really a shinobi, mister? The boy asked with giant eyes. Sasuke raised his eyebrow and nodded, which only seemed to entrance the boy even more. Tai. What did Hanaya say? You have to stay over in the deli if you want him to make you something special for lunch, Ria chided. How did you do that, mister? Can I see? The boy asked, ignoring his sister. Sure, Sasuke shrugged as he handed the boy the scroll, which was too big for his small hands. The boy ran his hand over the marking across the paper, as if trying to reveal the hidden items stored inside. I take it this is your little brother that you've mentioned, Sasuke asked, glancing back at Ria, who was coming around the counter. Yes, it is. Tai. Do you want to introduce yourself? Oh. Right, the young boy exclaimed before offering Sasuke a bow. My name is Tai. Nice to meet you. Sasuke offered the boy a slight bow in return. The pleasure is all mine, Tai-san. Are you really going to be in the exams? Yeah, I am. I'm leaving to train tomorrow. That is so cool, Tai exclaimed, jumping up and down, before turning to his sister. Can we go watch your friend Nei-chan? Please. Ria growled and shook her head. We've gone over this before, Tai. Even if I wanted you to go, the tickets are too expensive. We couldn't afford seats. Tai grew crestfallen and hung his head. You can take mine if you'd like. Both heads shot towards him in a heartbeat. One in excitement and one in irritation. Sasuke shrugged. They give the participants tickets for their family members, and since I'm in a clan, the seats would be in the VIP section reserved for clan heads. Tai's eyes were as wide as saucers and Sasuke was getting worried about how long the boy had been inhaling. The boy slowly turned towards his sister with a huge smile on his face. No, I said no, she tried to argue, as she avoided his ecstatic gaze. Don't you ask it, she grumbled as he tiptoed up and hugged her legs. Can we go? He whispered gleefully. Ugh, she sighed and shot Sasuke the stink eye, to which he simply smirked at. Fine, she muttered. Yoe! Tai cried out and began running circles around the shop. Ria groaned and laid her head in her arms on the counter. I hate you, she mumbled. I'll run by the tickets the day before the finals, he replied before having the wind knocked out of him by a small, human-shaped projectile. Thank you? Thank you? Thank you? The boy shouted into his stomach, tightening his grip around the boy's back. You're welcome, Sasuke replied. He looked to Ria, who was chuckling at his obvious discomfort, and made no move to help remove the younger boy. All right. Well, I have other errands I have to run, he said as he tried to pry the boy from his legs. All right, Tai. That's enough. Uchiha-sama has places to be. After 2 more minutes, they were finally able to convince Tai to let go of the boy. Sasuke pocketed his storage scroll and made his way towards the door. Thank you, Uchiha-san. Good luck with your training, Tai called out as he waved him goodbye. Sasuke smirked and gave the boy a nod, before heading out the door. The next morning, Kakashi cracked his eyes open as he finally noticed Sasuke approaching the gate. All set? Sasuke's nod was all he needed in response. Good. Then let's get going, Kakashi said as he turned to leave. Wait a minute, sensei, Sasuke called out. Kakashi sent him a curious look, as Sasuke gazed out at the crowds walking near the gate. Waiting for someone? They asked me to wait for them to get here before we leave, Sasuke replied quietly. Kakashi was silent before leaning back against the wall. All right. It's your time after all. If you think it's important enough to wait for them, then we'll do it, but if they aren't here after 20 minutes, I think we should head out. 15 minutes and then we'll go, Sasuke replied as he settled into the shade next to his sensei. They ended up waiting for 17 minutes, but as Sasuke was getting ready to just go, they finally caught sight of their targets. It was hard to tell at first, but there was no mistaking that blonde hair anywhere. They gazed down the road as Hinata and Naruto raced sideways along the walls of the storefronts. Sorry we're late. Hinata wanted to make sure it was wrapped, Naruto panted as the pair came to a halt in front of them. We had been planning this for a while now, Hinata panted, trying to catch her breath, and since you're going to be gone all month we thought we'd get it to you now. Naruto stepped forward and held out the box. Here. Sasuke raised an eyebrow, but took the box anyway. He carefully undid the lavender bow and purple wrapping paper, before finally taking the lid off the box. His voice caught in his throat as he stared down at the black and gray casing. You're going to be gone during the special day, but we wanted to do something special, Hinata said with a smile. Happy birthday, team. Sasuke was silent as he reached into the box and pulled out the thin, black scabbard. His hands were lightly shaking as he gripped the handle and unsheathed the blade. He weighed the chikudo in his hand, and smiled as he gave it a few practice swings. Finally, after so many blades that Kakashi had made him try in the past, this one just felt right. I don't know what to say, he muttered as he cradled the blade in his hands. Typically what you'd say is thank you, Naruto snorted with a smirk. Sasuke closed his eyes and chuckled, before sheathing the blade and placing the scabbard over his shoulder. Thank you both. It means a lot. Hinata blushed and gave him a bright smile, which was mirrored by Naruto. Now get out of here and practice with that thing. I expect to see both of you in the final match. Naruto smiled as he pumped out his fist. Quick as lightning, Sasuke unsheathed the blade and held it up to Naruto's throat. You may come to regret that one, but the sentiment is shared, Sasuke smirked before turning to Hinata, that goes for you too. It was about time we settled which is the better clan within Konoha. Agreed, and may the best woman win, she giggled as she pumped out her fist and joined it with Naruto's. Sasuke bumped fists with his teammates and turned to Kakashi. He nodded and gave the other two an eye smile and a wave, before they turned and made their way out of the village. A few hours later, 8 km. I can't believe you. I don't have to explain anything to you. I just don't get it, Naruto muttered as he held his head in his hands. Why do all of my senseis have to be perverts? He cried as he curled up in a ball and fake tears streamed down his face. Give it a rest already. Noisy brat. Shut up, Yajuu Sanin. What did I tell you about calling me that? I will call you what I want to call you, you filthy old man. You should be ashamed of yourself. Whatever, Jiraiya sighed as they made their way towards the center of the field. Now, unless you want to keep complaining, I believe we have work to do. Naruto sobered up instantly, and jogged after the man. Did you have any luck working on the masks? Naruto asked as he caught up. No, not really. I haven't had the time. I've been busy with a project the intelligence division wanted me to look into. I should be done with it in the next day or two, and I apologize. I might have to duck out for one day to oversee its results. Anyways, from what I've heard, you've made a bit more development on the mask subject than I did. What? Naruto asked as he tilted his head to the side. Remember that missing Nin I mentioned? The one responsible for 17,000 deaths? Well, congratulations. You managed to piss him off after preventing him from giving your pale friend the same mark he gave the Uchiha. Naruto stopped in his tracks as a cold feeling washed over him. What? Did Sensei not mention that? Well, consider yourself lucky from walking away unscathed from a meeting with Orochimaru. Naruto was dead silent and stood rooted in place. Oh. Jiraiya chuckled. It was rare to see the kid grow so quiet. And I punched him in the face. Jiraiya burst out laughing and slapped the boy on the back. Oh, that was priceless. He'd have to use that in one of his future books. You shouldn't be concerned, kid. Hopefully, by the next time you cross paths with him, you'll be able to ration yourself out of whatever mess you will have gotten yourself into. Sure. Jiraiya let out one more chuckle before coming to a stop. He turned to face the boy and folded his arms, his face finally growing more serious. Alright, let's get down to business. I've got you for the next month, and we are going to make the most of it. When I'm done with you, that Uchiha teammate of yours is going to look like a civilian in comparison. Sounds good to you? Naruto blinked out of his shocked daze and flashed him a smile. Good. Now, the first thing on our list is something very important to me and to the history of our village. This is a tradition passed along by my sensei to me, to the fourth, to a slight degree to Kakashi, and now to you. Naruto watched curiously as the old man unhooked the massive scroll from his back and set it next to him on the ground. Kid, I'm going to teach you how to summon. Naruto simply stared at him for a moment, before sighing and biting at his thumb. What are you? Wait, stop. Jiraiya called out as he watched Naruto go through the 5 hand signs and slam his hand towards the ground. Without a contract seal, there's no telling where he'll show up. Jiraiya was cut mid-thought as the smoke cleared and he stared down at a tiny, furry creature that had appeared before him. Its body was mostly yellow with purple markings along the top of its head, ears, and 2 tails that swayed behind its back. The tiny fox shook out its body and let out an excited bark at him, before racing around his legs several times and jumping up into Naruto's arms. Naruto nervously laughed as he scratched Kimi behind the ears, and tried his best to ignore Jiraiya's dumbstruck expression. Hee, sorry Jiraiya-sensei, But Kindesort already know how to summon. Chapter 40. Trial of the Empress. 4 years earlier. Kitsuyun. How much longer do I have to wear this thing? It itches. I highly doubt that, and a couple more hours I'm afraid. Be a trooper and push through it. We're almost there. Naruto humphed and tugged at the hem of his new, black kimono that Kitsune had graciously purchased for him that morning. He never liked getting dressed up. On the rare occasions that Gigi brought him to some special function or dinner, he would be forced to wear some hand-me-down from Gigi's son. Kimonos always made him feel vulnerable. They were just too light, and he detested the drafty feeling down below. Fine. Where are we heading anyway? He asked as he gave up fiddling with them. My place. The 8-year-old boy waited for him to elaborate, but quietly fell in step beside him when he realized he wasn't going to get any more information. While they made their way through the village, Naruto tended to linger closer to Kitsune's side than he usually would. As with every year, the angry stares and whispers seemed to be more frequent and hostile on this day in particular. While no one shouted anything towards the duo as they passed by, there was a clear edge of hostility in the air. As they passed a bar, one tipsy man, who had decided to start celebrating earlier, rose up to throw out a comment, but was quickly silenced once he realized who the ANBU alongside the boy was. After 15 minutes of walking, they finally arrived at a small cluster of buildings near the Hokage residence that typically housed off-duty ANBU. While most agents slept in the ANBU barracks during their rotations, even the ANBU needed a place to retreat to after the stress their line of work tended to create. With a swipe of blood on the door handle, Kitsune creaked open the wooden frame and motioned Naruto to follow him inside. Naruto took one step inside and sneezed from the dust kicked up in the air from their arrival. As he looked around, he could tell that Kitsune never really spent much time here. The dressers were covered in dust, and there was even a cobweb in one of the windows. Geez, Kitsune. You really need to clean up this place. That's rich coming from you. What state would we find your room in if we went there right now? Fine, Naruto mumbled as he tried to find a place to sit that wouldn't coat his new clothes in dust. Besides, there's no point. I'm never really here that often anyway, Kitsune replied as locked the door behind him. It was true. Whenever he was forced to take breaks by the Hokage, he would simply spend his time resting in the ANBU barracks. If he ever had any free time, it was spent doing 3 things: eating, sleeping, and training. His coworkers may have found it dreadfully dull, but it mattered little to him. He had a job to do, and he would spend every waking moment he had to ensure he could accomplish it. Speaking of which, he turned and faced the young boy, who had finally taken a seat after wiping off a stool at the counter and was staring back at him expectantly. So, what are we doing here? The boy asked as he swung his legs and glanced around the room. You're receiving your birthday present. Wait here, Kitsune replied as he made his way towards his bedroom. After making sure the door was shut tight, he placed his hand on the wall behind the door, illuminating a storage seal. As he reopened the door, Naruto was surprised to see he wasn't holding a present. Instead, Kitsune held a long, thin scroll. Its parchment was withered and faded, and there were some obvious tears along the edges. The blonde noted the obvious dirt stains, and felt a little disheartened by the sight. What was so important about a crummy, old scroll? What is it? Something very special. This is the only link I still have to my family. Technically, it was something passed down to me, and now, I'm willing to share it with you. Kitsune was silent as he let his statement sink in. If you are granted permission, I would like to allow you to sign this summoning contract. Naruto watched with wide eyes as the boy flashed through 5 hand signs and slammed his hand on the ground. The boy yelped as the smoke dissipated, revealing a massive red and gold fox that was roughly the size of Kitsune. The fox fixed its gaze on him and began sniffing the air as it approached him. Naruto tried to back away, but ended up leaning too far back, causing him and the stool to come crashing down. He groaned as he rubbed his back, and squeaked when he realized the massive fox was right in his face. The boy trembled but remained perfectly silent as the fox sniffed at him. It prodded him with its snout, before it started licking him all over his face. Naruto giggled and reached out to pet the massive animal that was assaulting him with affection. Kitsune felt his lip curl up as he watched the two interact. After a minute of coddling the boy, the massive fox turned around to face him, and said, "Huli is ready for you. He'll be calling us shortly." "Thanks, Ryoma." Naruto's eyes were the size of saucers as he stared up at the fox above him. "Did that fox just," he started to say before all three went up in a puff of smoke. "Talk?" Naruto stopped mid-sentence as he realized he was no longer in Kitsun's apartment. Ryoma happily moved out of his way, as Naruto pushed himself onto his feet. His eyes tried to adjust to the sudden change in light. The light from the fireplace dimly illuminated the room, but it was very hard for him to fully orient himself. He gazed around the tiny room with wooden walls and flooring, and was surprised by the route that jutted through the ceiling into the floor. He noted the table sitting in the corner of the room and was confused by the tiny chairs and table height. What just happened? "Ah, the guest of the hour has arrived," a voice called out behind him. He turned around and was shocked to see another fox smiling up at him. This one had gray fur and four tails swirling behind its back, and instead of walking on all fours, it strolled forward its hind legs with a walking stick in hand. That one can talk too!" Naruto cried out as he squatted down to the elder's level. "That is so cool!" Huli chuckled before waving off Kitsune, who had started to bow. "It's a pleasure to finally meet you, Naruto-kun. Kitsune here has told me quite a lot about you." "My name is Huli," the old fox chirped as he reached out his paw. "Nice to meet you, Hulijiji," Naruto replied with a smile as he shook the tiny fox's paw. "So they assigned us our time?" Kitsune asked over his shoulder. "Indeed. The council is going to be busy with a certain case for the next hour, but we are expected to show up around 2 o'clock. That should give you plenty of time to finish your business," Huli replied. "What business?" Naruto asked, turning towards the older boy. "Sorry, but Ryoma and I have some errands we need to run before the ceremony. It's just some paperwork we have to drop off before we can actually present you to Lady Shi. Do you have it ready, Huli-sama?" Yes. 1 second, it's down in my study. Let me go and fetch it," the old fox said with a wave of his hand as he headed off deeper into the burrow. "What am I supposed to do for 2 hours?" Naruto whined after Huli disappeared. "Don't worry. Huli-sama will keep you company. He'll probably give you a tour of the city in the meantime," Kitsune responded, getting down on one knee. "Now you behave for him. He was very generous to help us here. Do you understand?" "Fine," Naruto huffed, before Kitsune ruffled his hair. "Now why don't you go play with Ryoma while we wait?" Sir Naruto started before the giant fox scooped him up and flipped him on its back. Naruto giggled as the large fox spun around the living room, trying its best not to knock anything over. "Here it is," Huli called out as he entered the room, handing Kitsune a wrapped parcel. "That should suffice. I'm sure she'll be pleased with my selection." Kitsune nodded and stared at the duo playing in the foyer. Naruto giggled as Ryoma bounced back and forth across the floor. "What do you think of our odds?" Kitsune asked quietly. "Honestly? I believe Lady Shi will find him acceptable. Around 70% in our favor if you really wanted to put a number to it, but... But? Well, it also depends on how she may react if she notices his tenant." "What then?" "Then I'd say 50/50ths. "What?" he angrily whispered. "Don't worry," the old fox chuckled as he waved him off. "I've set some wheels in motion that should tip the scales in our favor. Just trust this old fox. Now you want me to hold on to something?" Kitsune nodded. After making sure Naruto was fully distracted with Ryoma, he handed the short fox the disheveled scroll. "Lady Shi won't tolerate this arrangement anymore, especially if she approves him, so I need you to look after it. Consider it done. I know how precious it is for you." "I'll take good care of it," he replied before collapsing the tiny scroll into a tiny black mark atop his cane. Kitsune was silent, but finally nodded and whistled for Ryoma. The fox immediately sprung up and shot over to his side. "Naruto! We're leaving." Naruto jogged over, trying to wipe away the slobber from his face. "All right, let's get going. Allow me to present to you the Forest of Eternal Fall," Huli smiled as he pushed open the round door to his den. Naruto blinked at the sudden rush of light, but after his eyes adjusted, he felt his breath hitch in his chest. It was stunning. The trees were simply massive. The width of each one was about the size of a city block. The ground and trees were littered in red and orange leaves, making the tree trunks pop out. In fact, as he gazed around, all he could see was orange, orange, and more orange. The vibrant leaves shrouded the woods and stretched as far as the eye could see. He craned his neck looking up as he tried to see the top. Beautiful, isn't it? Huli asked as he stood next to the boy. Yeah. Naruto stood in stunned silence for over a minute as he took in the sight. Come on. It's about a 5-minute walk to town, Huli said as he took his place at the head of the group. As they hiked away from Huli's burrow, a tiny head popped up from behind the roots of the tree. Its head cocked to the side and its tail began to wag as it caught sight of the small, blond boy smiling up at the trees. It quietly crawled out from the shade and darted from tree to tree, tailing the group as they went on their way. Wow! It was astonishing to say the least. Ryoma had not truly prepared him for how big some of these foxes were. While the majority was the normal size he was used to, some even dwarfed Ryoma by 10 feet. His gaze lingered on a particular red and blue one, but he quickly glanced away after it noticed him and started to bare its teeth. To be honest, he wasn't exactly receiving the most open welcome. From the moment he had set foot in the settlement, every fox he had passed seemed to be on high alert due to his presence. Now he was used to dirty looks. He got them every day back home, but this felt different. In the village, he could tell that they always blamed him for something, but these looks seemed to be directed at something else. They're not angry at you, Huli said, as if reading his thoughts. Could have fooled me, the boy muttered as every head seemed to follow his trail. Well, they're not exactly mad at you. They're just cautious. The Fox clan doesn't exactly have the greatest track record with humans. What do you mean? Huli chuckled. Well, as you may know, humans love to hunt, and when you have a fur coat as lustrous as ours, it tends to draw negative attention. Huli gazed up at him. For 200 years, mankind hunted down the foxes in droves, to the point where we simply couldn't stay in our normal homes. An alliance was built, and we were forced to leave our old forests behind and retreat here, where we have been hidden ever since. When was that? Naruto asked. Oh, about 11,000 years ago, give or take. Things certainly must have changed since then. From time to time. About every 200 years, the idea to expand is thrown around, but it's always dismissed. Better to remain here hidden among the other summons where it's safe. Just too much lingering resentment among the elders. Huli then snorted and glanced up at him. Plus, the humans aren't exactly helping their case. From your folklore portraying us tricksters, to more recent events such as the Kyuubi attack, foxes aren't exactly held in a positive light with your people. Huli was silent, before following up, and before you ask, no, there isn't really a connection between us and the Kyuubi. None? None. Well, he may have been molded after us, but that's a different story. Naruto raised his eyebrow in confusion. What do you mean? Another time perhaps. It's a long story, and I'm sure you would be bored by the details of an old sage. Oops. Hold up, Kitsune cut off, stopping Naruto with his cane. Naruto was about to ask why when he suddenly felt the ground shake beneath his feet. He glanced to his right and fell backwards in shock at the sight of the creature roaming towards him. As its shadow fell across his face, Naruto's mouth fell open as the colossal fox made its way between the trees. The thing made Ryoma look like an ant. It was huge. What? How is it so large? Naruto stuttered as he watched the beast walk away. Not every species of fox is the same, my boy. It all depends on what clan you come from, which genetics you inherit, and what not. Those larger varieties tend to hail from the more battle-oriented families. As you can see, they tend to grow quite large. You don't say, the 8-year-old whispered in wonder. Huli poked him in the stomach and lightly bopped his nose with his cane. Close your mouth or a bug will fly right in. Now, let's be on our way. As Naruto followed behind the humming, old fox, he began to notice something strange. While most of the foxes were fixing their glares at him, He noticed he was not the only one receiving negative attention. Huli Gigi? Why are the foxes glaring at you? Is it because you're with me? Huli simply glanced at the surrounding crowd and shrugged it off. Well, that may be part of the reason, but that's not entirely why. He chuckled as he glanced up at the boy who had caught up alongside him. Let's just say, I may not be the most popular figure in the village. But I thought you were one of the elders? Oh, I am, and it drives the council mad every day, he chuckled. While they respect my experience without a doubt, that doesn't mean they have to like me. They tend to see me as too soft for their liking. Too soft? Let's say that I'm one of the more diplomatic members of the group. Since we have spent so much time by ourselves, the council isn't very trusting of the world outside of the forest, even of other summoning clans. What other clans are there? Naruto asked excitedly. Who's closest? Oh, not many live near us besides two. There's a mountain to the west of here, whose caverns are home to a certain clan. To the east are the pigeons, although, if they had any brains, they would have moved years ago after finding out we were next door. Right as he said that, Naruto's stomach began to grumble, causing Huli to chuckle. I see your stomach is sharing in my sentiment. Well, we have some time. Why don't we stop for lunch? Oh! Can we get ramen? Naruto asked with stars in his eyes. Sorry, my boy, but I'm afraid we don't have that here. I want to go home now. Oh, come on now. I know a place around the corner that will be fine. We may not have ramen, but I believe we'll have something else that should satisfy you. Have you ever tried pheasant? By the way, Huli Jijui Kenti, I just signed the scroll now. Naruto asked between mouthfuls. Huli bopped him on the head with his cane and waited for him to swallow before replying. It isn't quite that simple. You see, all potential summoners must first be approved by the reigning head of the clan, or boss summon, if you will. For the foxes, the decision falls to the reigning emperor or empress. Really? What are they like? Naruto asked before taking another bite. Huli was silent as he twiddled with his silverware. Lady, she can be very well. She's not the most welcoming individual. She can be quite stern, and it's very hard to sway her from her decisions. Not to say that she can't be fair, but she tends to only listen to those who have truly gained her respect. How old is she? Naruto asked, before Huli smacked his hand with his cane, causing him to yelp in pain. Never ask about a woman's age, Naruto boy. It's considered rude. Anyways, to answer your question, she'll be turning 453 next spring. You're going to love the event. It's spectacular to witness. Naruto spit out his food and whipped around. 453. That's insane. You think that's old? She's actually considered quite young for her breed. She's about maybe a third of the way through her expected reign. What about you? Naruto asked. Me? Oh, for my kin, I'm getting up there. Around 824, give or take. Now stop gawking. Your food is getting cold. The blonde was silent as he began pushing around the food on his plate. After a pause he turned and asked Huli Jiji. When did Kitsune get to sign the contract? Huli stopped mid-drink and sat his cup back down. Young, very young. Even younger than you are now. Lady, she made a special exception for him due to peculiar circumstances. Huli was quiet, waiting to judge his reaction, but was surprised when the boy started giggling. A devious grin split apart his face as he turned to him and asked, So Kitsune was the last person to sign before me, right? Huli raised his eyebrow and nodded. I got you, Kitsune Baka. I'll finally get to see your name, he internally giggled as he rocked on his stool. Huli smiled and took one last sip before setting down his tip. Come along, Naruto. We have places to be. Our appointment is in about 30 minutes. With that, the pair thanked the chef and made their way out of the restaurant. As they walked out of the base of the tree, a tiny pair of yellow eyes peeked around the corner. After waiting several seconds, the dark shadow darted out from behind the trunk and weaved its way through the traffic after them. Huli made a slight glance behind him and caught sight of the tiny shape as it slid behind the door of a market, leaving a swirl of orange leaves in its wake. The tip of his lips curled up ever so slightly as he resumed their march towards the largest tree at the center of town. As they drew closer and closer, Naruto could not help but be amazed by the towering stone doors that lay underneath the roots of the massive tree. As they reached the edge of the hole, he groaned as he glanced down at the ridiculous amounts of stairs that lead down the lantern-lit stairway. Oh, don't be such a baby. It's only 1,000 steps. I've outlived you 10 times, my boy, and you don't see me complaining. Let's go. As they made their way down the burrow, Naruto could not help but be amazed at the impressive structural work that went into building this place. The roof stretched far above him, and without the aid of the lanterns lit along the walls, he wouldn't have been able to make out the ceiling. Finally, they made their way down to the bottom of the tunnel, and Naruto was even more shocked to find a marble floor waiting for them. Take a right. We should be meeting Kitsune outside of the council's chamber. After 5 minutes of walking, Naruto turned the corner to see Kitsune leaning against the stone columns in front of a large, bronze door. Right on time, he said as he caught sight of them. The council just finished their debate, and they're ready to start whenever we are. Good. Then let's get on with it, Huli chirpily replied as he made his way towards the double doors. Wait, hold on a second, Naruto yelped as panic started to creep in. What exactly am I supposed to? Quite standing around. Let's get this show on the road, the old fox called out as he pushed open the door. Kitsune sighed and just pushed Naruto along, despite his protests. Naruto braced himself as he was pushed through the double doors, but as he set his eyes on the council, he was a bit disappointed. After all the variously sized foxes he had seen today, the council seemed almost underwhelming. Around a large semicircular table were foxes of varying sizes, but the largest was no bigger than Naruto. Most were the same size as Huli. New case. 2:06 p.m. The council shall now address the case for a new applicant to make his mark on our summoning contract, the small turquoise fox in the center of the ring called out. The fox shot Naruto an uninterested look over his half-rimmed glasses. Lady, she wished for me to inform you that your offering was received and deemed fit. Offering? Naruto whispered. Just a tradition. It's considered impolite to request a meeting with the Empress without presenting a gift, Huli whispered back. I gave her a certain history book I've been holding in my library. She's been after it for years. Though it may soften her up. Yahem. Despite previous debate, our current summoner has decided to execute his right as the current head summoner to propose a new applicant. Nominator, is your sponsor counselor or elder present? Right here, Huli happily replied, tapping his cane against the floor. The council seemed to shoot him a short glare, before turning their attention to Naruto, who tried to stand as straight as possible. Are both the nominator and sponsor aware of the risks of the proposal? We are, they replied in unison, causing Naruto to glance between them. Is the applicant prepared to accept any consequences should he be deemed unworthy? The fox asked as it peered over its desk. Ugh was all he could reply as he glanced up at Kitsune. The boy remained quiet, but offered him an encouraging nod. Sure. I guess so. The fox let out a humph and stamped the piece of paper in front of him. Due to the rights granted to the head summoner, we, the council, will allow your nomination to enter the presence of Lady Shi. You may enter the throne room and begin your trial. Thank you, Honorable Council, Kitsune replied with a bow, before prodding Naruto to follow him back out. As they made their way back down the corridor, Naruto was starting to get nervous. What did they mean about consequences? Hulijiji? Yes? The old man replied, seemingly ignorant of the boy's distress. What exactly am I about to do? You are about to be in the presence of Lady Shi, and she is going to judge you to see if you are worthy of signing the scroll. How exactly is she going to do that? She is going to look into your very soul. She'll see every memory and decision you've ever made, and then measure your will and determination. Don't worry. While status is important, she does not really care about where one comes from. Work ethic is all she cares about. Hell, she had to climb over 2 of her own siblings to gain her throne. You should have nothing to worry about. And if she decides that I'm not the right fit? What then? Naruto asked hesitantly. Don't let that bother you. You'd be dead before you could even feel any pain. Naruto felt his blood turn ice cold, and was about to turn around and bolt. Before he could, he realized they had arrived. Two bipedal foxes wearing thick crimson armor motioned them to follow, and lead Kitsune, Huli, and himself through the entry arch of the throne room. It was a massive marble room, whose ceiling stretched even further than he could see. Past the red carpet that led up the middle of the room was a giant, silk futon flanked by stone pillars with flames erupting from the top. Behind the seat were two thick, purple curtains that stretched across the entire room. As they reached the room's center, Huli and Kitsune bowed down to their knees. After a few seconds, Kitsune reached up and forced Naruto's head down. The chamber was silent, the only sound being the echoes from the fires burning across from them. Finally, a smooth, feminine voice rang throughout the hall. "Applicant, please step forward." Naruto had honestly never felt more scared in his life, but he shakily started to rise and slowly walk about 10 feet away from the others. He stood perfectly still as he waited for this Lady Shi to appear. He wanted to glance backwards for some kind of reassurance from Kitsune, but a movement from behind the curtains caught his eye. As he glanced at the silk curtains, he could have sworn he caught a glimpse of white flash in the darkness. He gulped as a massive white tail, tipped with purple fur, swayed out from the curtains, slowly parting them before the massive form finally revealed itself. Naruto knew it was probably rude, but he couldn't help but stare. The sight was as awe-inspiring as it was terrifying. The massive fox from earlier in the village had nothing on her. She stood nearly triple its height, and 5 times as long. He froze as he felt her massive purple eyes lock onto him. Without a word, she prowled her way across the throne room, obviously in no rush. With each step she took, any temptation he held to run was quickly overshadowed by his limbs seemingly locking up in place. Whether it was out of a feeling to see this through or fear, he didn't know. At the very least, he felt some comfort in the idea that Kitsune thought he was ready for this. It was up to him to prove the other right. Finally, the snow-white fox stopped and leaned in so that the tip of her nose was within an inch of his face. Her massive eyes bore down on him with such intensity that he couldn't move even if he wanted to. He was surprised when a small, purple fire seemed to appear in her eyes, and then suddenly, he felt his vision dim. Lady Shi was silent as the boy's memories played through her mind. All of the tragedies. All of the loneliness. All bundled up into 10 seconds. She was honestly impressed. That amount of torment would break most men, but here this child persevered and still stood with his head up. Although she could tell that he still clung to some of his darker feelings deep within, the boy certainly had a will of fire. He would be just fine. She glanced over the boy at Huli, who held a smug look on his face, much to her annoyance. As she began to retreat from his mind, she paused. Her eyes narrowed and she began to sniff him. "Shit!" Kitsune internally cursed as he noticed her shift in demeanor. This was not going to be good. He slowly began to tense up and reach for his pouch, but felt Huli's hand clasp his wrist. "Let things play out," he whispered, seemingly unworried by the events unfolding in front of them. "This chakra," she mused as she delved back deeper and deeper into his mind. She pushed back into the furthest depths of his psyche, until finally, her eyes shot open as another face with slanted eyes grinned back at her within the darkness. "You!" Naruto yelped and fell back on his ass as Lady Shi reared back and growled at him. He frantically tried to say something, anything, but felt his words stuck in his throat. All he could do was try to scoot away as the massive creature let out a roar, baring teeth the size of 10 men. He lay frozen as the massive beast opened its mouth and purple flames began to glow in its throat. "Ah!" Naruto whimpered, glancing back at the others. "Shit!" Kitsune cursed as he prepared to move, but Huli would not lighten his grip. Lady Shi roared and reared back her neck, fire erupting from the sides of her mouth. A small pair of yellow eyes hidden within the shadows of the throne room were wide in disbelief, and the small figure began darting out from its hiding place. As Lady Shi brought down her head, the tiny shadow came to a stop in front of Naruto and growled at her. Naruto winced as he awaited his fiery demise, but was surprised when it never came. Instead, he slowly lifted one eye and was shocked to see a tiny yellow and purple fox standing between him and the towering behemoth. Their eyes were locked in a nonverbal argument, but neither seemed willing to back down. Naruto couldn't help but notice the purple markings along the small fox matching those on the Empress. After another few seconds of silence, Lady Shi's glare returned and flames started pouring from her mouth again. The tiny fox seemed just as surprised as Naruto, her ear flattening against her head. It started to tremble, but held its ground, even as Lady Shi began taking a deep breath. Without even thinking, Naruto jumped forward and clasped the tiny creature in his arms, turning his back to the Empress, and tried his best to shield the tiny fox with his body as best he could. He felt the heat of the flames tickle the back of his kimono for a solid minute, but was surprised when it retreated yet again. Intriguing, the feminine voice echoed throughout the room. Naruto glanced over his shoulder as the massive fox stepped away from him. The fox seemed to study him as she glanced between him and the tiny yellow ball of fur in his arms. Fine. I shall allow you to pass for now. But know this, Naruto Uzumaki, she growled as she leaned down in his face, if any ill shall fall upon her, let this day be a constant reminder of what shall happen. She then shifted her glare onto the fox in his arms. And we will talk later. With that, she turned around and made her way back towards the massive futon at the end of the room. Well, I'd say that worked out better than expected, Huli chuckled as he walked up to the pair. What just happened? Naruto gulped, his eyes never leaving the form of Lady Shi as she eased into her bed. You passed, my boy. Weren't you listening? Though I'm sure you have little Kimi here to thank for that. For the first time, Naruto finally had a chance to really look at the small creature in his arms. The tiny yellow fox looked back up at him, eyes brimming with excitement. He glanced over her purple ears at her vigorously wagging tail. Yay! I have a new summoner! She cheered as she rubbed against his neck and climbed her way around his shoulders. Ugh, okay, Naruto weakly chuckled as she rubbed her face against his cheek. Kitsune finally let out the sigh he had been holding and made his way over to the trio. Let's get this over with so we can head home. I think we've had enough stress for one day, he muttered as he made his way toward Lady Shi. He bowed before her throne, before slightly lifting his mask to bite his thumb. After 5 hand signs, he slammed his hand into the ground, revealing the sealing contract. After receiving a nod from her, he made his way back up the corridor and stopped in front of Naruto. So, what do I have to do? You need to sign it in your own blood, Kitsune replied as he rolled out the paper. Gross, Naruto flinched, but bit his finger like Kitsune did and waited as Kitsune passed the paper in front of him. Excitement finally rooted away the fear as he realized his big moment over his shepherd was at hand. He almost giggled and glanced down to the bottom of the list, but froze as his eyes locked with the final name, which simply read Kitsune. Oh, come on! He cried out as he glared at the boy in question. What? That's not a signature, and you know it. That's horse crap. It's what I go by, and that is good enough for the seals. Humph. Party pooper, Naruto murmured before bending over and scribbling his name as legibly as he could on the paper. He leaned back and tilted his head as he noticed something. Hey, wasn't this thing more dirty earlier? That was a personal copy. This one is for the official declarations, Kitsune dryly replied as he rolled up the scroll. As he tucked it across his back, he offered one last bow to Lady Shi. Thank you for your generousness, Lady Shi. I promise he won't disappoint you. See to it that he does not. And you, she said as she turned her glare on Naruto, causing him to freeze up, know this. I shall be watching you very carefully. Are we clear? See crystal? He cried out, bobbing his head furiously. She then turned her glare back at the fox around his neck. I expect you back before 6 o'clock, young lady. We are going to have a very, very long talk. You got it, Mom! The fox shouted back, seemingly unconcerned by any potential punishment later. MOM. What do you mean MOM? Naruto shouted before Kitsune reverse summoned the 3 of them back to Konoha. Silence finally settled back over the throne room, and Lady Shi turned her gaze on the last remaining occupant. I take it you had a hand in her appearance, she spoke in an even tone, with a hint of steel. I haven't the faintest idea what you're talking about, Your Highness. I would never let it slip to the princess that a potential summoner would be arriving today. Our tutoring sessions are only focused on her education. Lady, she growled, but he paid her no mind. This is a dangerous game you are playing, you old fool. For the first time since arriving, Huli's face became more serious. Perhaps, but you granted me permission to sort this mess out, so trust in my ability to see it through. I shall. Just remember not to overstep your boundaries. Would never dream of it, he chuckled before offering his own bow and making his way out of the throne room. As the doors closed behind him, he glanced down at the storage seal atop his cane. He pressed his finger against the mark, revealing the dirted scroll Kitsune had given him earlier. As carefully as he could, he unrolled the parchment and glanced down the list of names towards the bottom. A dangerous game indeed. The steps from here on out are going to be all the more difficult. He gazed down at the second to last signature and sighed. What trouble are you bringing us, Naruto Uzumaki? Thanks for watching, Shinobi Squad. If you enjoyed this what if, hit that like button, subscribe, and ring the bell so you never miss the next twist. Drop your theories in the comments, I'm always reading. Want more Naruto heat? Check out the other videos on the channel. Stay sharp, stay awesome, and remember even shadow clones need love. Peace out, Shinobi!